Hopefully that wasn't too loud.
It wasn't.
All right, good. Good morning, everybody. Calling to order the March 19th Stearns County Board of Commissioners meeting. Let the minutes reflect that all members are present and accounted for. Please rise and join us in a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay.
All right, thank you all. Dr. Williams, are there any changes to the additions to the agenda?
There's not, because I just see that E17 is setting the public hearing, which is the blue folder item you have here, so there would be no changes
Okay.
to what's been printed here.
Okay. Seeing no changes, looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
Thank you, Commissioner Bertram. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Persky. Seeing no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The agenda is approved. Now move to the consent agenda. Members, is there any items that you'd like to see pulled? My understanding is not. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Notch. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Bertram. Seeing no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And for the public who's here or perhaps watching, we want you to know that we ask lots of questions before our meetings about things on the consent agenda. So if you see anything on there and you're wondering, are they even looking at this? We do. It's really an important part of what we do. So thank you. All right, administration, Dr. Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Your first item is an annual report from this Soil and Water Conservation District, and I'm assuming, Dennis, you will introduce yourself and others.
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Thank you, Mike, Chair Clark, and the rest of the commissioners. My name is Dennis Brooks, Administrator of the Stearns County Soil Water Conservation District. And Matt Bruette, if you'd like to join us up here to chair the
I was
board.
going to say, anybody who's planning on joining you, feel free to come up.
We also have Chuck Upoff, Arlen Lorenz, Ken Sheffers here as supervisors, and also staff person Greg Berg with our implementation team manager. And then also, I should let folks know Tom Gregory was not able to join us today, so no cookies today.
And Mr. Fuchs, if you're willing, go back to him and ask him for the rain check, because we look forward to seeing him at an upcoming meeting.
I will do that.
We will be meeting in a couple of weeks, so he's got time.
Yes, we can help him prepare, or more importantly, him asking his wife to help him prepare. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we'll start off with the annual report from 2023. The cover here is a photo, the winning photo from our photo contest from Tammy Sales, who's from the Holdingford area. Beautiful photo of a fawn deer. I want to start off by thanking the county commissioners for their continued support of the Stearns County Soil Water Conservation District. As you know, our mission is to support voluntary conservation actions to preserve and enhance Stearns County natural resources. These are some of the winning actions for the photo contest. As you can see, there's a lot of great photos. These are all of Stearns County, and just a beautiful place to work and live, as you all know.
Sure.
Yes, Commissioner.
Yeah, that was good play, Dennis. You said a fawn deer, and then now you got a John Deere on there too. So
I'm not playing words. I'm not real fond of John Deere's.
I noticed a couple of
I'm a red guy.
our library branches will be having haiku workshops, and perhaps you could go and turn it into haiku.
Yeah, interesting idea.
Please continue.
we disrupted
We're
you.
obviously a little silly this morning.
I want to just briefly mention some personnel accomplishments from the SWCD. I think most of you know Chuck Opoff, and he was also named the Outstanding Conservationist Supervisor for the state of Minnesota last year from the association, which is an amazing contribution and recognition. Mark LaFave, our Conservation Planning Team Manager, was recognized as a trusted advisor. And also Ryan Rothstein received the Next Generation of Forever, from Pheasants Forever for the Next Generation Award, which is the young folks working on habitat across Minnesota. Looking at our financial information, if you look on the left side, the operational funding, that's what it takes to keep the lights on, staff, vehicle, rent, and then on the right side is the project program funding through from 21 to 23. If you take a look at the operational funding, you can see there was a bump in the amount of funds that it takes to operate the district, and that's for several reasons. One, our rent went up about 33%. We added a staff person, a water plan coordinator to assist with all the One Watershed, One Plan activities across the county. Also, just the inflationary increase of health expenses and staff salaries. If you look at the project program funding, you can see that we bring in a significant amount of state and federal dollars to bring in support to the county and its residents to protect our natural resources. And one thing I want to mention, we started off with the picture of the county commissioners. I just want to thank you again. That baseline support under operational funding that we received from the county is what provides the strength of the SWCD to be the award-winning district we've become. Looking at our West Central Technical Service Area, that covers a 12-county area, and they provide engineering technical services for SWCDs across that area. And you can see the team there. 4 of the folks are located in Stearns County. One is located up in Long Prairie with Todd, and another individual located in Stevens. It allows distribution of our workforce across that area. It results in a lot of projects getting done. You look at the number of projects assisted by county, you can see Stearns County rises to the top. That's what we like to see. And we do have a lot of activity occurring here in Stearns. Education and outreach, the more time we spend with our residents, teaching them about best management practices, the easier our job becomes. And we had numerous activities throughout the county, as you can see here, and also some of the highlights are presented in the photos on the right. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to stop me. Ag resource management, again, these projects are all over the county. But I do want to mention that we are now targeting our efforts much more so than in the past. The One Watershed, One Plans are requiring us to work in targeted areas more so. So if we have requests outside of our project area, sometimes we don't have funding available for them to address a resource concern. But we also work with our Natural Resources Conservation Service, our federal partners, to help reach out to those folks so that we're not leaving anybody behind in the county. Our outstanding conservationist for 2023 was Hillview Family Farm. That's the Kerfelds, close to Freeport. And they're a dairy farm that is farming in a hilly region of the county, and having them implement conservation practices has resulted in improved sustainability of their farm fields and also protection of the nearby lakes, as you can see in the photo capturing the lake in the background there. We also had a bunch of shoreline restoration and protection projects throughout the county. And we did have a educational event on the Sauk River Channel Lakes last year. And that actually resulted in about 6 new projects, and you'll be seeing those in the future. Just goes to illustrate how important those outreach activities are to get people excited about doing the right thing. Wildlife habitat and protection. We do have folks focused on this, and that includes Ryan Rothstein and Jason Selvog, and Greg Berg is their team manager. Just highlighting some of the various activities across the county. Right now, we're taking folks for the CRP, helping the Farm Service Agency with folks that are interested in participating in the Conservation Reserve Program. We also have the Wildlife Habitat Steward, a relatively new award. The Outstanding Conservationist is more focused on agriculture, where the Wildlife Habitat Steward is more focused on wildlife habitat. And that was the Eggers family that was honored this past year, and they have participated in getting involved with several programs, including the Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program and the Minnesota Land Trust easement programs. As far as community conservation, we're actively increasing the awareness of nitrates in our drinking water. I know you've probably heard a lot of the karst area of southeast Minnesota experiencing elevated levels of nitrate, but we do have some of that occurring in Stearns County too, where we have our coarse textured soils, like along the Sauk River, on the eastern edge where we have the Anoka Sand Plains, and then out by Belgrade Brew in the Bonanza Valley. Those areas, we have to be very careful on how we manage our nutrients, and we are working with the Minnesota Department of Ag, with the communities of Melrose and Cold Spring, and down the road, Roscoe, on addressing their nitrate levels in their drinking water supply. Project highlight, we did the County Road 1 project with the Stearns County Highway Department and also the city of Sartell. This was a great project. If you ever drive up on County Road 1, you can see some of the work that was implemented. There's also a lot of underground work that was installed, so you can't always see some of the benefits, but it is a great project, and very happy to have accomplished the good we did working together. All right, some of the upcoming events for this year, we have We Are Water, the Minnesota exhibit. That'll be at Art in Motion on the Lake Wobegon Trail. That'll be opening on April 25th, going until June 16th, and with the opening ceremony on April 25th from 4 to 7 p.m. It's a great facility. If you don't believe me, just ask Supervisor Arlen Lorenz, and he'll set you straight on how great that place is. We also have a conservation tour, and you'll see a separate handout in your packet of the conservation tour, and that'll be coming up Thursday, June 13th. A couple special things that'll happen, not only taking a look at conservation projects implemented in the past several years, and hopefully we're going to hit all of the One Watershed, One Plan planning areas, including the Sartell, Mississippi, St. Cloud, Mississippi, North Fork, and the Sauk River. We also will be recognizing our supervisor, Chuck Upoff, will come to, his term comes, let me not say that his term is coming to an end. Let's just say that he's resigning the end of June. And we will be looking for a supervisor to finish out his term the last couple of years. And where he represents the townships, the 8 townships in the northwest portion of Stearns County. And we're hoping that we can find a female to take his spot and diversify our board from the past legacy. The other thing that we've got going on is the celebration will be happening at Art in Motion for Chuck after the tour. So that'll be a fantastic time to shake his hand and buy him a beer. And that's all I have for the update. If there's any questions, I'm here to answer them. And if you need any additional handouts or hard copies of the annual report, we can make those available.
Any questions?
Madam Chair, just
Commissioner
for the
Bertrand.
record, obviously our contribution is about 1.2 million. And again, what a great partnership between the state, federal, county in making these things happen. A lot of people don't understand how this all works. And the one thing that I've always encouraged the board, your board, and you, Dennis, is whatever you can do to minimize, to decrease the cost of these projects, keep working to do that, one, within the county, and two, within the state and federal regulations, because just think of how many more projects we could do. My sensitivity is always, you take a project that maybe would cost, $50,000, $75,000. By the time you get the state and the federal guidelines in, it ends up costing triple that. And then, of course, the less funds you have, the less projects you can do. So whatever you can do and whatever you can advise us to try to help make happen to reduce those regulations would be helpful. Because, going all the way back, my dad was a part of, the ASCS, and certainly back in the day, I'm trying to think of his name, who was the guy that was around forever, and now it's blocking me. He's from St. Joe. Well, before you, of course, Joe Fitzgerald, and then the staff member, though, it doesn't, but they were around the farms personally, just like Francis Janiska, and those guys were like, the Pope in Stearns County. I mean, then when they showed up, and people wanted to do projects, and that, what you started with that you want to do it voluntarily, and you encourage them, you educate them, you don't force them, and you're going to get a lot further, and you guys get that. But let's try to do as many projects as we can and minimize the financial obligations to the best we can.
Mr. Fuchs, any comments on that?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Bertram. We definitely try to keep those costs. We do require folks that participate in projects to get at least 2 bids from people that are doing the earthwork. And we've seen significant savings by doing a little shopping around. And with the actual design of the projects, we have to follow the Field Office Tech Guide, which is the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service Bible on how we implement conservation practices. That is to a standard to ensure that if we do have weather that climate events that could knock out our structures, that it doesn't happen. And we've seen over time that following the standard has resulted in projects that last a long, long time. Thank you, Commissioner.
Well, and on behalf of all of us, thank you, the board, your staff. For those who might be watching or listening, I'm sorry, I didn't see you before. You may not be aware of what our Soil and Water Conservation District does, and it is amazing. It's probably, I share absolutely your questions, so don't take this as I'm disagreeing. It also is one of the best values that's out there. It's a great investment from our board. Every county should be doing this, both on the shoreland restoration as well as working with our ag land folks and our stormwater. I mean, you've done some amazing things right here as we're sitting in St. Cloud. So thank you for that. And Jody Tyke and I, our chief engineer, as we were going around and talking about transportation last week, we were following you all around quite a bit. So what was great was getting to reinforce the promotion of the legislature needing to step up the investment as well. Commissioner Lenzmeyer.
I'm less concerned, this sounds silly, but about the financial impact. I think there ought to be at least some consideration, and maybe you can even include it in the report, in picking projects that do environmental damage. I'd like environmental damage to also be a criteria in addition to Jeff's concern with the cost. If we fix something that is causing problems on the environmental side, that's payback is lifelong. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you. Commissioner Persky.
Yeah, Madam Chair, just a comment. Yeah, Dennis, and also we recognize those people that do a lot of volunteering on their own as far as reduction of erosion and clean water practices. You know, they're not necessarily receiving any compensation for that, but they're doing it for the right reasons, and we're glad those folks are doing what they're doing. So.
That's an excellent point, Commissioner Persky. We do have field days, and we have folks that have contacted us that they've modified their practices based on what they had learned at the field days without any cost share incentives. One other thing I forgot to mention is we're celebrating 75 years later this year, and I was just so excited to talk about having a beer with Chuck that I forgot to mention that we are celebrating 75 years of existence, and looking forward to another 75 years.
Well, please make sure we get invitations, because that'd be
I'll
great.
miss that party.
And I forgot to say, although Chuck might
I
prefer
think
that
I'm
I
booked already.
didn't say it, but Representative Anderson had a really nice surprise. It doesn't happen very often, but he had a legislative resolution honoring Chuck for your work. And you do amazing work, and you do it all together. So thank you for that, and congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you. Look forward to seeing you on one of the many fun things, including the beverage with Chuck.
All right, thank you.
Great, thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Wonderful. All right, environmental services. Ms. Benson, Ms. Berg. So we're going to be, this is the, I know you're going to tell us more about it. This is us conducting the public hearing. It's a very limited, targeted, I can almost talk, public hearing. So please explain to us what we will be doing next and for the members here who might want to speak to it.
Madam Chair, Shelley Benson, Environmental Services Director, and Angie Berg here to go through the public hearing process. This specific item was at the Planning Commission and then forwarded here. And you guys requested a public hearing to have further conversation. The essence of this is really related to the amendment of that interim use permit to allow for additional time within the scope of what they had requested originally. And Angie is here and can go through the remainder of any other questions or concerns that you would have. And then we do have the applicant and the landowners are here, so they will all be available as well.
Ms. Berg.
Good morning, Commissioners. Angie Berg, Environmental Services. The only thing I wanted to correct from the agenda item is the deadline for making a decision on the request is April 20th, 2024, and that would be without a waiver from the applicant. So in case you're alarmed by that date, that was incorrect, and it's April 20th. I did not receive anything from the public for public hearing. I do know there's many people here from Wakefield, so perhaps they'll discuss some things with you. Unless there's any questions, I know we talked a lot about this back in March in terms of when to schedule the hearing. Again, it's to extend an interim use permit that was granted, and so the board really today just holds your public hearing and makes a decision on whether or not you're going to extend it as requested.
And as we're opening up, my understanding, so you're going to correct me when I say this wrong if I do, is that the question is whether then the length would be similar to how we handle it in a conditional use permit. This is the first one we've had that was an interim use. And so a number was put on it. And the question is whether or not we will extend that, recognizing that in either case, the time frame is pretty long. I mean, they've already been approved for a length of time. So can you refresh everybody's memory about that? And then we'll open up the public hearing.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the board, prior to 2021, all of the solar farms that went in front of the county board were for conditional use permits, and conditional use permits run with the land. There's no time frame associated with them. And I think where many people got that 25 years in their head was from one of two things, either the contract with the landowner and or B, the time that the panels usually, the lifespan of the panels, right, was 25 years. So we heard that a lot for over the 10 or 15 years we heard conditional use permits, but they were not ever intended to be limited to 25 years. So then in 2021, when the board changed the ordinance and allowed the first 1 megawatt to become permitted, the second megawatt then on a parcel became interim. And as you stated, Madam Chair, that this application is the first one issued under an interim use permit.
Great. Well, thank you. And was there any written submissions for the public hearing?
There was not.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. That is for our back room so they can hear it. If you wish to speak to this request, please stand up and come talk to us. If everybody, we end up having multiple people, which is quite fine. We welcome that. If you start hearing something that you're agreeing with, either just let us know you agreed with it, just so that we can keep moving the meeting along. Or if you have something else to add. Thank you. Go ahead.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I'm Heidi Stahlberger with Wakefield Township Zoning. Back when this was heard at the Planning Commission level, the Wakefield Township Planning Commission reviewed the request. Although it wasn't being permitted by the Wakefield Township Planning Commission or Wakefield Township Board. We do review those requests that are significant in our township. And so our board, our planning commission reviewed this request, and the comments that I submitted to the planning commission, the Stearns County Planning Commission before their public hearing were what I will read. Since then, I've had some conversations with staff and, maybe could have directed this conversation a little bit differently. However, this is what our planning commission felt. The Froehle Solar Garden IUP date extension at Stearns County, the planning commission reviewed the proposed extension of the expiration date and stated benefits on the permit, and the stated benefits on the permit application of commercial and economic viability as well as operation for the entire useful life. The planning commission pondered if the reason for the request is to allow both solar gardens on the same parcel to be scheduled for decommissioning at the same time, which would be a financial reason for the request, as well as in previous permit requests reviewed for solar gardens, the useful life has not exceeded 25 years, 10 years less than this request. Although this is not at the heart of the request, the Planning Commission also considered if placing more than one solar array per parcel by different solar companies is the adaptation of the PUC regulation of local permitting maximum to a 1 megawatt solar garden. Additional questions were raised as to whether there's a limit of how many 1 megawatt solar gardens can be placed on a parcel, or if there's a distance limit of placing solar gardens per company, for example, 1 mile. And then I forwarded these comments to Stearns County Planning Commission for their public comment portion at the public hearing. So as I stated, we maybe have more information or additional information and a different understanding of this. However, the Wakefield Township Planning Commission and subsequently Wakefield Township Board did not make a stand to say that we did not forward any recommendations that this not be approved by the Planning Commission at Stearns County.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. And we'll probably ask Mr. May at the end of this to make sure that we all are having the same understanding about some of those questions. Welcome.
Richard Blankish, 2122 Cypress Road, St. Cloud, Minnesota. I would like to start I'm a member of the Planning Commission, and I just wanted to correct one item. I did this at the last Planning Commission, and Angie wrote this down, but on the night that the commission approved, I did not vote one way or the other. I was mulling this over, and I thought, this isn't right, the time frame. But also when some of the members were talking about the financial impact. And in my training in previous years, I've only been on the commission 6 years, but at one time we had in-service in regards to legalities. And one of those things that we were instructed was do not make your decisions on the financial situation for the applicant. And so those two items kind of stuck on me, and I was just mulling this over, and then the vote took off. And so I guess officially, I don't know if that's an abstaining or whatever, but anyways, I wanted to correct that with the board here. And then the other thing that came to mind was that in other industrial applications that are put on or approved on ag property, we limit 26 years, and that is, the example is mining operations. And producing electricity on your ag property is kind of an industrial process. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Welcome. State your name and your address, please.
Good morning. My name is Isabel Froehle. I live in Cold Spring. I am the daughter and niece of Eddie and Ray Froehle. They are the owners of the land that the solar farm is going to be on, and they're both hearing impaired, so I'll be speaking for us today. The extension would help us out with having a reliability for money for financials to plan for our farming, and it would also help to have that extended because as the moment they'll kind of be right at the transition from the farm from my dad and my uncle to me to have that extra sense of security when I move into the position of the farm would be amazing to have that opportunity to have that money coming in for necessary changes that would need to happen for where we would want to move the farm forward. And the land that the solar field is on, it is marginal field land for us. So in normal years, last couple being the exception, the spring's really wet. And that field is all river soil. It's muck. You can't really do anything with it because the spring's too wet. So your crops suffer most of the year. So having it there is really the ideal position. We can't use it to farm usually in normal years efficiently. No one can see it. It's a dead-end road, and it just makes sense.
Thank you. Good morning. Please state your name and address.
Yep, my name is Brian Keene. I'm with New Energy Equity. We're the applicant, 2670 Patton Road in Roseville. And as you've heard, just heard, this is kind of the perfect site for solar. When we've developed a number of sites, throughout the years here, and the complaints that we get are always visual or not taking prime farmland out of production, things like that. This is hidden as well as you could possibly be hidden. It's not prime farmland. It's not in an area that's going to be developed. There's, wetlands and, a creek behind it, and it's not, in an orderly annexation area or anything like that where it's up against development pressure. So this really is a great use of that parcel. We've got fifth generation landowners that are, supportive of this and want to have this as a long-term use of their property. And they've certainly got some rights as landowners to develop it how they see. We run into some practical difficulties, in the process of development here. XL Energy has been phenomenally slow in reviewing applications. And so that set us back home. That's eaten up time of, within the approval period for the IUP. We've had supply chain issues that are still ongoing. You can't get a decent sized transformer on the market today. You've got to wait 6 or 18 months to, get one. The reasons for us asking for this extension are, those practical difficulties. We'd also like to make full use of the solar equipment. So, the equipment's getting better and better and better. We've got panels now that have a 35-year warranty. So they're doing 85% of their production at year 35 as they were year 1. So they're still very valuable, useful pieces of equipment. Obviously, the development effort that goes into putting these projects together is not small, and we'd like to make full use of that throughout the lifespan of it. Most, uses that are permitted through an IUP and, where the county wants to put some kind of time limit on it, there's some kind of dynamic nature to that. So a gravel pit was mentioned. Well, obviously, as a gravel pit grows, you get closer and closer to the edges of the parcel, or maybe equipment changes, or the noise changes something, or, if you were to permit a music festival, perhaps the crowd grows, or the music grows, or the stage different. You want to be able to look at that over time. Our solar site is fixed. So what we put in day one is what it will be the entire program. We're not going to go in and change it. We're not going to move it. We've got all the conditions of the IUP that, that are in use and in control, throughout that entire term. So it's a little different animal than a lot of other uses. We'd really ask you to consider this one issue alone. The one issue we're asking for here is an extension to the IUP. The solar project has already been approved. It's already adjacent to one that's approved under a CUP, so that'll be there on the property as well. So we've had a lot of side conversations. There's been a lot of confusion with procedural issues with the county and things that I think we're kind of in the crosshairs of, and I think unfairly a bit that this project is being talked about, in a bunch of different other issues, when what we're asking for is just a simple extension to that IUP, that's already been approved. So we'd ask you to, be a supporter of the landowner rights, be a supporter of clean air and water. Our solar projects do a great job of that versus any other development or land farming even. And we'd ask you to, to approve this as an extension to the IUP, as a standalone issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Thank you for allowing us to be here today. My name is Vince Robinson. I have a company called Development Services, and we are the developer of the solar project here. I'd like to first say that I am a local person. I grew up in Kimball, graduated from Kimball High School. My parents live here in St. Cloud. I have numerous relatives here in Stearns County. And so what is good for Stearns County is good for a lot of my family as well. When we look at this particular solar project, one of the things that I, as a developer, look at is the family that it's impacting, the farm family it's impacting, the resources that it's impacting. The location is important. In this particular case, by every comment that I've heard, this is an ideal location for solar. It's on a dead-end road. It has limited, if any, visual impact from anybody driving by, any landowners next to it. It's in a low area that cannot be developed for residential or commercial use beyond what this is. So it's also an environmentally sensitive area in that it's close to a waterway and next door to some set-aside land that's owned and operated by the Minnesota Land Trust. And so what this project is able to do is to provide pollinator habitat, which is critically important. It provides filtration for the water system that's there. Because of the water table, it's a much better use for the property than farming. And so extending the useful life of this project only helps extend the environmental positive impact that this will provide. So as we've said, I've heard a lot of comments about things that were unrelated to this particular site and this particular issue. We have landowners that really want this to extend so that they can make some long-term financial decisions to pass on the legacy of their farm that's been in their family for 125 years. And the township is certainly supportive of it. We've been through the process with them, unlike some of the other comments that have been brought up about projects not being in front of the township. We worked very closely with them from the beginning to get their input, to get their understanding and permission, quite frankly, to move forward with this, and they've been very receptive to it. So with all of that said, I hope that you'll look at this project on its own merits and not in relationship to some of the other issues that have been brought forward, and make the decision based on that. With that, are there any questions of me at this time?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Okay, with that, I will close the public testimony part of this. If members have a question for Mr. May, we can bring them up. I think some of the things that I heard were probably outside of what the issue is right in front of us. Anybody?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the IUP as presented.
Okay. Is there a second? I'll make a second for the purposes of discussion. You know, it is an interesting thing, but before we open it to further conversation, I have wondered for a period of time, it makes sense that we want people, if they get approved to do something, that the time limit is about that project. We want them to get going. There are times when it is just nobody's fault about them getting going. So it does, to me, seem a little odd, even with the 25 years, that the time is ticking when they are stopped, when they can't actually proceed yet. So that is something that I think is worthy of us considering regardless of anything else, because it's kind of hard to say, if what this really is, once Excel says it's okay, among other things, it's not us saying when it's okay. So I find that a little peculiar in the way we do business. Commissioner Lensmeyer.
Oh, Joe first or me first?
Joe, go ahead.
Okay. I think this, I look at this proposal and I'm disappointed at the narrow approach you folks are taking here. There are other tools available that don't involve a local government approval for this to happen. There are tools like deed restrictions. You can put things that you can attach to the title that essentially say this land shall be used for subsequent to the 25 years. And it accomplishes the same thing, and it doesn't involve government approval. I'm going to vote against this. This is, you folks are presenting this as this is the only possible way. You can get exactly what you want in other means. So, yeah, I'm voting against it. I don't want to see a bunch of properties out there with 50-year limitations. If you want it extended to 50, I suggest you extend it to 75, because then we'll all be dead and it doesn't matter.
So Commissioner Lensmeyer, I think the issue, I'm interested in these other tools you're talking about. I think no matter what else might be available to them, it's still on this particular issue. My understanding is that we have to approve or deny regardless of what other tools there might be, but maybe I'm missing something.
Deed restrictions, in short.
Right, but deed restrictions don't have to do with whether we'll allow them to, whether we versus their deed.
The applicant is limited with deed restrictions to do exactly what they want in the future. And I'm not willing to see us make a decision like this that ties up the property for so long. The farm I grew up in, it's now in the city of St. Cloud and no longer exists. Over time, land use and other aspects of our environment change. So, no, this has not been, in my opinion, sufficiently researched. It's not up to us. If they get a denial today, there are other things they can do. And so I'm not going for it.
I think I might need Mr. May to come up and help at least me understand what that intersection is, because I think it's really interesting what you're bringing up. But it would help me to know for sure as we're moving forward on the request what the implications or the tools are that Commissioner Lensmeyer is talking about.
Yeah, Commissioner Clark, Commissioners, I have not looked into or researched the ability to use other types of mechanisms to accomplish this. They certainly could do that, though. It's a mechanism they could use to restrict the property as far as transfers or in the future. It would still require, due to the ordinance, especially on an interim basis, to go to the board in this circumstance to get an extension. Obviously, the permitted 1 megawatt, excuse me, first 1 megawatt would be permitted under the current ordinance. Others would be then required to be accomplished through a CUP that would go in front of the board and have its own public hearing. So while that would indicate a designation for the property going forward, it would still require them to do other things.
Let's take another shot at it. What are you saying?
They could, the property owners could encumber the property with a deed restriction indicating what you're saying.
That's right.
And That you also said we would still have to be making a decision under the ordinance.
Correct, because our ordinance requires us in this circumstance for an extension of time for the board to approve or deny that.
And in 25 years, it's conceivable other regulatory issues could arise. I think this hasn't, I appreciate these folks are trying to do a good thing, but their perspective has been narrow. This can be accomplished other ways. For folks that get concerned about government overreach, I think we're there.
Commissioner Persky and then Commissioner Notch.
Angie, I'm going to ask you a question here, but first let me say, if we take a look at the site, I think the site is a very fine and awesome site for a solar garden. I mean, if you take a look where it is, again, it's out of the view of mostly of the public. It doesn't smell, it doesn't make any noise. It's going to be there and it's going to produce energy. And over the next 25 years, that'll not be a problem. But then Angie, after that 25 years, isn't it just a matter of extending that and reviewing and taking a look at, do they want to switch the panels out? Maybe in 25 years, there'll be more efficient panels that might be able to produce 2, 3, 4 times the amount of energy on the same location. Or if the panels are working appropriately and they have already expanded the field, that they just go ahead and apply for a new permit, which would be a interim use permit, or even change it over to a CUP. It would just be a checkpoint at 25 years of what's going to happen on the property. Is that not where we're at?
Ms. Berg.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Persky, everything you said is an option except not requiring a CUP unless the ordinance would change.
Okay.
So yes, the property owners, the applicants could apply for an amendment anytime now or in the future. We touched on that a little bit, I think, back in March. For reasons I think that they stated during the Planning Commission meeting, they're asking for it now. But you would have to ask them what those reasons are.
Okay. Anything else, Joe, right now? Okay. Commissioner Notch.
So, thanks, Madam Chair. So Commissioner Lensmeyer's comment, are you more or less saying they could enter it into like a RIM program or something other than solar? Or I'm not tying the two together because...
Actually, I'm suggesting a non-governmental solution. There are tools available, for example, a deed restriction, and I think that...
to restrict it from what?
Huh?
To restrict it from what?
A deed restriction, if someone, like the hearing we were at last night, if the folks didn't want to change the property use that they're talking about, they could attach to the deed of a subsequent transfer that the property wouldn't be allowed for any other use but environmental. I'm disappointed in us. There's other ways to accomplish things that don't necessarily involve government. And
but how would they incorporate a solar array without involving government if we have the ordinance?
You can get the solar array approved for 25 years. They're not prevented from doing that, but at the end of 25 years, the reason is that things change, times change. We won't be here, but some of the great ideas we have about alternative energy will create problems. With the deed restriction, all that would have to happen is the folks that have a vested interest in the property could go to an attorney and ask it to be changed.
But what financial incentive is there to just do a deed restriction? I mean, they're doing the option of, we want to put a solar array on here. So
well, they got one 25 years and they wanted to go another 25
okay, so
years.
basically you're saying 25 years is okay, but 35 years is not, is what you're getting at.
Yeah, because things changed. Look at
Right.
your own community.
Right, but let's just say if they're delayed 2 years on getting a transformer and you're on a 25-year, they might only have 22 or 23 years to produce energy.
Guess they got a problem. Assets aren't easy to manage sometimes.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Bertram.
Well, Madam Chair, a couple of things, but first of all, let me just state for the record, when I said that I was being asked questions from the Planning Commission in Wakefield Township and the Township Board and Planning Commission members, I was a little bit taken aback. I was questioned on that, like that wasn't true. And I even, there was someone that even contacted them and said, Commissioner Bertram said that, is that true? I've never seen that happen before. So I was a little bit caught off guard by that. Well, we heard this morning, and those questions, they were all confused of why is this before us and what is this? And they didn't feel comfortable either asking, or it happened so fast that they just kind of did it. So just for the record, I wasn't making that up, and I was a little taken back that my integrity was being questioned on whether or not I was just making that up. And then unrelated to this, but at the last meeting, I said that the townships oftentimes don't hear about things. And a commissioner and a staff person pretty much said, that's not true. They're notified. Well, within a week, there was one of the applications that was approved administratively was approved. And because I've demanded receiving those applications when they're approved, I got it. And I sent it to Zion Township, and I said, well, I assume you got this, because the town county said they knew nothing about it. So again, I'm not making this up. We've all got strong opinions on this, but we really got to operate from an authoritative position and just a cooperative position. We all have very strong feelings about this, but when someone's integrity is kind of being questioned just because you don't agree with someone, that's kind of a slippery slope. So the one thing, Brian and I had a really good discussion, and the best thing that was said this morning so far by Vince and Brian and everybody, there's a lot of moving parts. And that's not their fault, that's not our fault. I don't know. And one question I guess I should have started with is, so in 2021, when the staff asked the board to approve that it goes from an IUP to a CUP, why did staff ask for that? Shelley?
Madam Chair,
Ms.
Member
Benson.
Bertram, the situation was we had gone through our comprehensive plan, and during the comprehensive planning process, we talked about doing things more administratively, and that was one of the changes that was looked at. So we made those changes to do not just that, but several things, IUP, CUP, and then changing the first 1 megawatt to a standard permitting process versus the newly then interim use process. So there were several changes in solar and other areas that were related to the comprehensive plan, and that was one of them.
And before we go any further, I want to make sure we're staying narrowly focused on the one issue in front of us. I think we all heard a lot of information the last time we had a conversation, and it was a little confusing to follow some of it. As you said, there are a lot of strong feelings, but we have one issue in front of us, which is whether we're extending this particular one, if we're going to limit it. And at some point, I think it would be good to be at least saying, when do these start, as opposed to when they're approved. But I suspect that given what the conversation is, that it will be limited to the 25 years. So I actually, unless somebody strongly thinks they're going to change somebody else's mind, that we go ahead and vote.
Well,
I
Madam Chair.
move we table this, and not indefinitely, but what?
So Commissioner Lensmore, say more about that. What would happen with tabling it?
Folks can explore other options. This is to hear what's been said this morning. This is the only possible way this can happen, and that's not so. They can accomplish this through private means without government approval, because at some point, I guarantee they'll want it to be changed, and we haven't done them any good. All they got to do, if there's a deed restriction, is that they're in control of their own process to get a deed restriction lifted, so has nothing to do with government.
So Commissioner Lenzmeyer, and I appreciate your thinking, I mean, you bring so much experience from other ways, and as does each person here. I am not sure how them doing that would change the fact that our ordinance requires us to make a decision. Is there something like, or are you hoping staff would help them figure out how they avoid it?
I don't know if it's a staff issue. I don't know if it's our issue. If we table it, we haven't denied them any future change of interest that involves us. But I don't think every possibility here, some of them being administratively cheaper, prevents them from what they want to do.
So I think, and I promise I will get back to you,
Yeah.
Commissioner Bertram. I think what I'm hearing you say is that you believe there's other options out there that wouldn't involve us, that they could do this on their property. And my holdup is that we have an ordinance that requires us to do something, and I'm not sure how we get around that. Either we do or
Well, we
we
can
don't.
table it and try to figure it out, which
Right.
is what I'm
Well,
going
we
to
have
move.
until April 20th, and I have to admit, for me, this is about whether or not we're just going to let somebody do something that they want to on their property that fits within a very narrow definition or not. So let's continue the conversation. Commissioner Bertram.
Madam Chair, I do have some points, and I would appreciate making them because we're in this public hearing, and it is going to affect other things. Can I just suggest that Commissioner Lenzmeyer think about, voting on the motion that's on the table? That does the same thing, in my opinion, because what some of the confusion is, these two sites are going to be built. Nothing we do, if we deny it today, they're still going to get built. And I did not support all the solar applications. I've supported less than others, but I supported both of these. And what Ms. Froehle said, 100%, great location, good place. We were given a business plan. I voted for it, and I'm the most skeptical. I was on a planning commission. I recommended approval, so I supported this. But even the developers have said it was really confusing to us on what we were dealing with. And again, that's not our fault. That's part of the process that the staff's created, and these administrative approvals and the IUPs and CUPs. That's a little bit beyond us, and we got to kind of rein that all in my opinion. There's a lot of counties that still require RUPs, and they're right around us. I'm not saying either one, sorry. The administrative approvals, I do not support, and that is something, but I support, and Brian and I, like I said, had a great conversation. I said, it's unfortunate for them to be in this situation. It's not our deal that Excel isn't approving these. I mean, how many sites did we recommend that Excel didn't accept, and now they've gone to the wayside? How many solar sites have been developed and sold 3 times, and we didn't even know about it? I had to push that issue of saying, how can we contact the developer that they're not complying with something when that developer sold it 3 times already? Well, now they have to tell us if they sell it. Those kinds of, so those are all the moving parts, and this is happening, in my opinion, way too fast. And then, of course, God bless the solar companies, and Brian and Vince and others may not be involved with that, but boy, they sure must have coffee once a week, because the minute one company does something, they're all doing it. The only reason there's 2 applications and approvals here is, and Commissioner Persky feels more strongly about this than I do, the companies had coffee that Saturday morning and said, you know what? If we do it as one, we have to go to the PUC. I tell you what, Mike, you do one and I'll do one, and then we can split it, and then we don't have to go to the PUC. And again, God bless them. They're there to make money. The Froehles are going to be able to continue to do this, and they should be able to. And if this solar company doesn't do it, another solar company will do it. And so that's not going to go away. But so you can build. Excel is an our issue. The Planning Commission member Blankish, thank you. I thought I was losing my mind. I got trained before you did, and that's what I brought up at the last meeting. That's what Marcus Miller, the county attorney's office, said: do not base your decisions on financial consequences. So if you can't get the supplies and everything else, I feel for you. God bless every one of us business owners could tell you stories about what we can't get and the expenses of that, but that's not part of, we grant the permit or we don't grant the permit. That's what we're doing. The 25, 35, part of the, and just think of this, this makes me more paranoid, because we're told disposal and all that stuff, that's still being planned. And then we were asked 25, now we're saying 35, it's a moving target. There's so much unknown to this, and we just keep approving these, one after another, after another, after another. So again, they're gonna be able to build it. They're gonna be able to come back after those years, and if there's no issues, they're gonna be able to be re-permitted. I mean, nothing's being withheld. This is just a fast start kind of to something that we really don't, everything's gonna happen. Let it play itself out. I think I'm gonna stop there, but I agree, and I would recommend that Commissioner Lenzmeyer to think about acting on the motion. It will do the same thing rather than tabling it. Tabling it, we're time certain.
So anybody else?
So now I'm confused. So
Yeah.
are
And
we
there has
just,
to be a second to table it, so right now it's not being tabled.
right, well,
We have to have a
my
vote on
question is, so we have an IUP in front of us. Is the question that it's approved based on 25 years and they want 35, so we're amending it? Is that really?
Yes,
is
that's
that
what their
the main-
request is to.
So can I offer a compromise? If it works for the applicants, can we do 30 years and call it a success on both sides, and then come back and explore it as a county board if we want to tweak the language in our ordinances? I'm just proposing something to help everybody.
Madam Chair, my comment to that is I don't like dealing with hypotheticals. What's before us is grant the IUP extension or don't, and that would do nothing, in my opinion, other than lay that as another, what they're going to do is using a precedent, other companies saying, well, they did it for them, now we want it done. And I think, again, cleanest way is to deny it and to let them build it, let them operate, and then when that 25 years is up, to reapply for the permit. We do this all the time with sand pits and a lot of other things. So if there's no problems, and by that time they'll have figured out disposal options and all these other things, and God knows what the state will do by then, we can reissue the IUP. Nobody's being stopped
You
from
mean a
doing
future
nothing.
board will?
Correct.
Because it will not be us. We will all be gone. And
God, I hope
just-
not.
just-
I want to be like Lee. I want to be here.
Lee's not that old yet. So we will all be gone. And again, we have a landowner, we have a family who's making a request
I'm
to
gonna be
us who will be around. We might not. And this is not an unusual thing for us to do. It's not hypothetical. What is a little different is the whole thing about this would be the first time we will have told them, by the way, our ordinances are. And a lot of thought has gone into the ordinances. A lot of thought has gone into them. And it is hard when you've got a power company basically holding everything up. I mean, I would like to see us at some point with these kinds of projects saying that the time starts once they're finally given the ability to move forward. But we don't have that. So I know, Steve, this is really not about anything else. It is about whether or not in this particular instance, the family could go ahead and have this for either 35 or 30 years versus 25. Otherwise, I'm going to channel Commissioner Mergen, former Commissioner Mergen, and on this one instance, not about solar, but otherwise they're going to have an extra cost and extra time to come back. And at some point, there should be some question about how much governmental intrusion we're having on property owners about how they're conducting their own businesses. Commissioner Notch.
So then just to go to specifics, if we read the proposal is to amend the interim use. Well, the interim use permit was for 26 years until 2048. Well, we're in 2024 right now. So 26 years, shouldn't that start once the permit is issued? Because again, going to the point, they didn't, at the time, did they know? I'm not sure. I mean, we still don't, I don't think we officially have it in our ordinance, a set time. I think we're going off of what we've done in the past.
Right, Ms. Berg, can you speak to that?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Notch, so we do not have it set in our ordinance how many years for an IUP. It's subject to the applicant and the Planning Commission and the board. And I do agree that in the future, we should have discussions on interim use permits and when they start. Similar to short-term rentals, they start when the license is issued. And so I also know that, as Commissioner Bertram stated, that some solar companies would ask for permits before they go to Excel, and some ask for permits from the local government after they go to Excel. And so, again, there's this game of time that we can't necessarily know when Excel is going to approve something. So I do agree. I think the next time we have one, or maybe before we have one, we'll visit with the Planning Commission about that and see when do they want that year to start. Is it when it's built? Is it when it's operational? Is it when they have Excel's approval? We need to discuss that a little bit
Or
more.
at least encourage them to not apply until they actually have that approval. And I think the information you gave us last time about the fact that we're going to start having significantly less new solar gardens and added is something that might actually relieve everybody's consternation over these. Commissioner Persky.
Yeah, and Angie, I think when we do the process there, we're looking at the sunset date, and that is what we put on the IUP. And so that there's a definite timeline is when the IUP terminates, and that's why we set the date where we do. And as far as them going online, they're able to get that online as soon as their production is available to go online, because we, okay the permit for them to move forward. So I guess it would be a little difficult. Then it would just be another process about saying when it would come on. If we would want to add, a year or 6 months to it, to me, that really, it doesn't matter whether it's 24 or 25 years. To me, the 25-year figure is just an idea that after 25 years, we're going to get a chance to evaluate this. Is there any harm to the environment? Is the production okay? Do you want to continue it? If so, thumbs up, and away you go for another 25 years, or maybe even longer. So I think before us, we got a simple question of whether or not we're going to give the extension or not.
Right. Let's go ahead and vote, unless you had something more. I'm
No,
sorry, I didn't cut you off.
and the point being is that I don't see anything wrong with this location. I see nothing wrong with the family working with the power company to have this agreement, and 25 years from now, it'll probably continue.
Commissioner Notch.
Just one quick question. So in the interim use permit shall be valid, it says for 26 years until 2048. So did this process start then in 2022? Because 22 plus 26 would be 48, right?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Notch, the original permit was granted on January 3rd, 2023, and it was valid through to currently December 31st, 2048. So yes, 26 years. So basically, this request is asking for an additional 12 years.
Okay.
It's 2060 and 2048.
So on the motion to extend, and then we're going to vote. Commissioner Lenzmeyer, go ahead.
Just one last comment. Sometimes these processes, things become obvious that aren't said. I find it fascinating that the power company is sandbagging their end of the deal. I don't think, they're a corporate entity, they operate differently than we do, but they have slowed down the process. What's going on there?
Yeah.
So they do know something we don't know. So, and that's fine. It's not a violation of any legal process. Sorry.
No,
I've had enough.
I think it's a good observation and a good question. And unless you have another one, we're going to go ahead and take the vote. On the motion to extend, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign.
No.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Lenzmeyer,
No.
Commissioner Bertram,
No.
Commissioner Persky,
No.
Commissioner Notch,
Aye.
Commissioner Clark,
Aye.
fails 3-2.
Madam Chair.
Yes,
Angie, do you
Commissioner
need the
Persky, quickly.
affirmative on a denial or not?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Persky, no.
Okay.
You don't. I would just offer that we will be bringing back findings of fact at a future meeting because the Planning Commission's findings support an approval.
Okay.
Madam Chair. I didn't hear his question, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I didn't hear your question.
My question is, did we need an affirmative on a denial?
Oh, yes, that's what I was thinking. I thought that's what you said. That's what we always had to do in planning.
But that's fine.
Yep.
Yeah, if you voted against it, you had to bring it up if you.
So Chad, you're the attorney.
Okay,
Is
thank
that
you, thank you very much.
I think the record is,
okay?
yeah, with the roll call. Yep, Commissioner Bertram.
Commissioner Knotts. Go ahead.
I just, I guess it kind of disappoints me a little bit when you have a planning commission voting 6-0 to approve, and we don't accept that as the county board.
Yeah.
I guess that's the only comment I would like to make.
It's an issue that reasonable
just-
minds would disagree.
Yeah, that's fine.
We generally don't even bring them up, though. That's the one thing that's weird. And I sincerely hope we don't start trying to tell our ag producers how long they can farm or where they have to farm or what they're doing. I mean, this is government intrusion, and I just want to name it that way. Is there anything else? Ms.
Madam
Benson?
Chair, yes, I have one additional miscellaneous item for all board members. You will be receiving a survey from the Board of Water and Soil Resources. So check your inbox for a PRAP, a Performance Review and Assistance Program for county local water management performance standards. So each commissioner will be getting a survey request from the Board of Water and Soil Resources. The Soil and Water Conservation District managers are also getting that survey. Other entities and other elected officials will be getting that survey. The survey results and that information will be considered public information that will be tabulated. If you have questions about anything related to that survey, Becky and I have put Becky actually put most of the information together. So there may be some questions that you need some information on related to that survey. Feel free to reach out to myself or to Becky related to that survey, but wanted to let you know that it'll be coming your way. So Board of Water and Soil Resources PRAP survey.
Thank you.
The surveys from Soil and Water.
It's from the Board of Water and Soil Resources, Bowser.
I'll be
So
looking for
they will
it.
be sending that to you, and
In the next week, 2 weeks?
I expect it'll probably be this week, is my understanding.
And do you have any idea what the turnaround time they're looking for?
I do not know what turnaround time they
Well,
have.
When one of us sees it, we will let you know what that is and reach out to you. Thank you
Okay,
very much.
thank you.
Okay, members, we've got the next item we have is the 2024 Assessor's Report presentation, and then we're going to take a break unless you feel like you need one now.
No,
You know,
Go
this is a
ahead.
great board, and I personally really enjoy working with all of you. So even when we might have strong questions or concerns, I think we're able to move on and keep figuring things out. So hopefully we're able to do that today.
that's why they invented happy hour.
It is 5 o'clock somewhere, right? All right, thank you. Welcome. Could you please introduce yourself for the record?
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Jake Pitti, County Assessor.
Morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Randy Lahr, Assistant County Assessor.
I believe we have a PowerPoint that will pop up here shortly.
Great.
This is just one step in our process of marketing the assessment. So we like to come before you and talk a little bit about our values and how we got to where we are today. Randy and I were just on Chasm Radio last week, and we'll be out at a lot of local board meetings up here in April, as well as the noxious weed meeting. We like to get out to the county fair. We like to, anytime we can get in front of the public, it's good. Our predecessor was a big proponent of marketing our assessment, and so that's what we're kind of here to do today. To start with, looks like it's still loading up here, but
Here it is.
yeah, we could talk about the assessment. I know Randy Streifel sent out an email recently to the commissioners about the upcoming taxes. That's based on the 23 assessment, so that's taxes payable this year. Not to be confused with what we're going to talk about right now, which is the 24 assessment. So this will be taxes payable in 25. So to start off, we go through our overview. The property assessment work completed, quintile inspections, market condition trends, sales activity and ratios, valuation changes and market observations, as well as new construction And as always, all slides are Stearns County data only and don't include the city of St. Cloud because they have their own assessor's office. So we started our assessment work last April. This continues through May of this year. Our quintile was in the upper 90% range. I think it was over 99%. So we hit almost every property we were supposed to. That's pretty typical. Our staff is great at getting out and looking at properties and doing a really good job of talking to property owners. Our valuations were completed on February 23rd, very similar to the year before. Not much for overtime or comp time that was needed. Our notices of valuation classification were planned to be mailed on March 14th or 15th, so everybody, I believe, is getting those in the mail right now. I think some people received them as early as Saturday, as well as an email notice that people can sign up for, which typically arrives a few days ahead of the paper copy. So our 24 assessment market condition trends. So this year, if you look at the 23 sales study, which is for the 24 assessment, it's broken up into the western half of Stearns, eastern half, and then Sartell and Eden Valley have their own market areas as well. So it just talks about the trend, the typical value change that may be needed to get our assessment to where it needs to be. So western off-water properties needed about 4%. Eastern off-water was about 3%. So that's for residential. Sartell is a little bit higher at 4.59. And all on-water properties are in one pool at this point, so they needed about a 4.7% change in value to, it's an overall. Obviously, each district is different, but this kind of gives us a big picture look at what we need to do, as well as Eden Valley at 3.14. We actually talked with the Department of Revenue into lumping Eden Valley in with the eastern portion of Stearns because Eden Valley is getting pulled in with Meeker County's trends, which aren't typically, as solid as ours, I guess you could say. So that's why they're at 3.14, which mirrors what Eastern Stearns is on that slide. So our sales processing this year is down, as you can see. So for 23, the number of sales that we processed through our office, our staff looked at and verified all commercial, industrial, apartment, and agricultural sales, as well as any residential sales that appear out of the norm. So we talk to property owners, we'll go out, visit the property, or email. It depends on what works best to get the verifications done. And we find out a number of different things about these sales, whether they're a relative sale, prior interest, a contract for deed. There's so many different moving pieces with the sale that we like to call on anything that looks out of place. And we've always done a great job of that in our, this year, as you can see, it's down quite a bit. So in 2023, we're at 1798 versus last year at 2325 and the year before at 2642. I did see an article in the Star Tribune recently that sales are back up again for this year, but that'll remain to be seen. We're about halfway through our study period at this time. So I don't know if you have anything to add, Randy, on that.
I was just going to add that just because we have a smaller sample size for a lot of our districts, our appraisers had to do a little bit more work this year in calling more of these sales because when you have a smaller bunch of sales, it's hard to get a grasp on what that median sale price is. So we ask our appraisers to call those what might be an outlier and it might be the market. So it just involves a little bit more scrutiny in our appraisers to verify these sales that they're good market data. So.
Well, moving on, this
just really quickly, got a question.
On that point, my understanding is that what you do in jurisdiction is you always take the really high one and the really low one and discount those, or don't you do that?
No.
They don't, depending on if it's still considered a market sale by the Department of Revenue's guidelines, it typically doesn't affect it though because we use median sale price, not average. So it essentially kind of gets off to the side because of the median.
So you don't take the top one or the bottom?
No outliers are removed, no.
Okay, I could have swore you said that on that property that you and I were talking about. You said because it was so low, you didn't discount it. I don't know what the word is, but you didn't take that into account, but we can talk after.
Yeah, we can.
That's what us appraisers do.
Well, that's what the appraisers do.
Commissioner Persky, that's true, Commissioner Lund.
No, Jeff, I know what you're saying, but I think that's why they take the median instead of the mean.
Exactly.
Because then they find that middle price. That's more realistic. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Persky. So getting back to the qualified sales activity and ratios, it's just a quick rundown of each property type that we look at each year and how many sales we've had of each. if you look even, the apartments, there was only 9 sales this year. Last year was 15. Commercial sales were down 26 versus 35. Industrial was up 6 versus 1, but that's still a pretty small sample size. And you can see the second column shows the ratio before we make any changes to our values. So, commercial, we're at 90%. And you'll see in a later slide that we went up about 5% on our commercial values. So this kind of tells you why. We were at 90, we like to target 95. So that's where we ended up. The residential seasonal, we had 846 sales that were qualified sales that went into the sales study. The year before it was 1,101. So like Randy said, we have less to work with this year. So, not that our staff doesn't do a great job every year, but this year, we had to be a little bit extra on our toes to really dial in those sales. And we were at almost 92% on our ratio. So that was good. We didn't have a lot of movement that was needed. Just kind of cruising through. We can hit on each one of these as the slides come up here. So apartments, like I said, we were at around, I think, 83%. So we went up about 10%. A few went up a little bit more than that, some as much as 15 to try and get us to that 95% range. The apartment market's been strong. Almost every year we've come here and talked with the commissioners about this. We're always going up around this 10% range. And every year we keep hitting that. And the sales show us what we need to do, and that's where we've been on those. Commercial this year was a little different. We've had more positive change in the commercial and industrial side. We were, changes of -5 to 10% were common, but overall we were about 5%. So slightly higher than last year. I think we were around 2% last year, maybe 3%. So the commercial sector's coming on a little bit more than it had been. So, typically shows a good market. Seasonal, recreational, residential, the 2003 market, it was healthy. Higher prices were paid again, but we did see that 23% drop in number of qualified sales that I talked about earlier. So that's, it can be concerning at times, but there's still such demand out there that we're not, seeing a lot of change right now. And, we came in at about 92%, and we're going to go up probably in that 3, 4, 5% range that we showed you earlier with those time trends. That doesn't mean everybody's value is going to change that way, but it depends on where you're at, what portion of the county, if you're on off water, size plays a factor. But, typically 0 to 10% is what we're seeing this year with most residential properties. So, barrel land sales, I think Randy wanted to talk about those, and agricultural as well.
Yeah, I'll start with, so basically this is probably 2 acres up to, 34.5 acres. That's where agricultural study kicks in. So this would be more of the rural residential type of stuff. And the slide hasn't changed much in the last several years just because we continue to see this market as hot. People are looking for places to, get out in the country, look for, small acreage parcels that are still affordable. So it's a strong market for residential, seasonal, and hunting, and even some hobby uses. We had seen, it was kind of the central and the eastern part of the county where we've seen, the biggest change in the market on these. We are seeing that creep a little bit further west. I would say the line used to be probably between Wakefield and Munson townships and, up north and south, but we're starting to see that shift, even further west of Munson now. So not that there's stuff further out as well, but that's where we're really starting to see it impacting. So again, prices are still increasing into the new study. And then moving into the agricultural rural vacant land, so that'd be over 34.5 acres in size. The market still remains strong here on both productive and non-productive land. This sector still seeing growth, not nearly what it was the previous assessment. You may recall we were, I think, 20 to 25% for last assessment. So definitely slowed down. The big part of that, obviously the commodity prices have tumbled. Interest rates have gone up. So this year we did increases in the 7 to 10%. I would say the higher end of that range would be for bare land parcels, improved land or improved farms. We didn't have to do quite as much on those based on the sales ratios. I already talked about the interest rates and so forth. As far as what's keeping the market going, even with those commodity prices and interest rates going up, it seems to be the buyers that have saved up from the previous couple of good years that we've had. And then also people looking to expand for the future into for their next generation of family. So those continue to be the buyers that we see buying in this market. Real estate experts are still expecting the momentum to carry into 24 that we saw at the last half of 23, just because of what we just talked about. The farmers seem to have saved up some of the money from the good times, and we're seeing it stretch into 24 based on our sales as well. And then just to give you an idea, I think Commissioner Knott, you've asked in the past, what is our tillable going for? Our average tillable right now is 69.77, so basically 7,000 an acre is what our average tillable parcel is selling for, compared to about 6,400 last year. So,
Yes, Madam Chair, I was going to, have we seen stuff on the other side of $10,000 an acre?
yes, we have. Yes, generally it's probably not a huge parcel, but yeah, it's still in our egg study over 10,000. We had a few last year. Yep.
I heard rumor of that, but I'd
Yes.
had it confirmed. Yeah.
Yes, it is true. Yep.
All right, moving on, the total estimated market value of the county grew about 6% for the 24 assessment, which is lower than the 10% increase we saw the previous year. Still a good number. The growth in overall market value is approximately $1.13 billion for the 24 assessment, which is lower than the $1.76 billion increase for the previous year. The new construction is up though. So we were up about $200 million compared to the previous year of $180 million. So about 18% of the EMV increase was new construction. So the new construction was strong. The other increase, the lesser increase this year versus last year was just based on a lesser market value increase overall, with mainly residential not seeing the increase that it did in years past.
I was going to point out real quick, the new construction numbers too, a lot of that was in the apartment market. We had a large growth in apartments and then also agricultural properties as well.
And new home construction. So for the 24 assessment, we're down about 2%. As you can see, we were at 203 last year, and this year we're at 199. Quite a bit down from the 21 peak of 294 home starts, but still, sort of in that range of where it had been before, in the 220 range. So things are down, like I mentioned before. With cost to build coming down a little bit, we hope to see that number improve this year. And, if interest rates could come down a little bit as well, that may help people too. Other than that, that is all that we had today. Do you have any final thoughts, Randy? Or So if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer. Or as always, you can email our office or give us a call anytime.
And what's the best way, knowing you've got a couple different ways up there, if somebody has a question about their own property to contact you, or when they hear this? I know that we have at least one person who's going to have a lot of questions after this presentation.
Yeah, no problem. The telephone number, that's our main line, and they can get right to, if they want to talk to me or Randy, or if they want to talk to the appraiser for their area. They're probably the most knowledgeable about that area of their township or city, so we can get them to any of the above. Or if they just want to send an email to that property assessment at stearnscountymn.gov,
Okay.
they can do that as well.
Good. Commissioner Notch, it looked like you might have something.
Oh, nope.
Nope, okay. Commissioner Bertram.
Madam Chair, not that you're surprised anymore by anything, but I'm curious, anything surprise you guys by doing this data?
I don't honestly know this, not for me anyway. It was a pretty smooth year overall as far as changes went. With the ag values still strong. I don't know if you were surprised by that at all, but
The new construction, I was a little surprised how high that was this year. Yeah, I figured it'd be up, but not that much. Yeah, that's
Good
good,
point.
healthy growth.
Yep.
It's good to see that, actually.
Yeah.
Commissioner Lenzmeyer.
The two things that I thought might be significant, one, the obvious rise in interest rates has an impact on the market. I didn't hear you say COVID. Is that an issue at all from your perspective?
it doesn't seem to be, as far as, going out viewing properties or just the sales, the markets in general. We're not really seeing any effect of COVID at this point. It's
maybe indirectly because our office values aren't quite as strong as they used to be, and some say that's an impact from the COVID era. More remote working.
Every other aspect of industry, it's all about COVID. Well, maybe it's not.
Yeah, not much that we're seeing. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you. Thank you for this step in the process. It's really helpful, and we will we'll make sure we're letting people know who to contact when they have those questions, and very interesting
Yeah,
information.
thanks a lot.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
With that, we're going to take a brief recess, and we'll come back in a few minutes. Come back to session. Our next item is a parks presentation. Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Ben Anderson, Stearns County Parks Director. The agenda item I have in front of you today can be found on packet pages 122 through 124, and it's receive an update and consider approving the Natural and Scenic Grant Area Resolution for fiscal year 2024 in regards to the Paynesville property acquisition. So just a couple of follow-up items from the previous board meeting that I attended. Wanted to let the board know that the landowner has verbalized that they are willing to do as proposed by the county board during the closed session. So that's good. It gives us options moving forward into the future. I also, we were directed to work in conjunction with the community for fundraising, and that has gone pretty well, in which I'll ask Commissioner Bertram to speak to once we get a little bit further down into the agenda item. And then also I wanted to mention that last night we had a public meeting about the property in Paynesville in conjunction with the Paynesville Community Foundation, and we had 50 people in attendance, and it was very well received. You did receive an email from me this morning that did have some of the concerns, and the two biggest concerns that we heard last night were just making sure that the boundaries are clearly identifiable, and then making sure we are doing our due diligence to keep the land, the footprint of the park light on the land. Which the conservation easement and the grant that we're looking at applying for both restrict uses that can be done out on that property regardless. So we have also worked with the DNR on the grant application as directed by the board. And we did confirm that the grant request has to be based off of the purchase price, not the appraised value. So it has to be off of the actual expenditures. So we are looking at the $600,000 for the acquisition. The grant would pay up to 50% of that. So the match would be $300,000. And this is where I'll ask Commissioner Bertram if you could talk to how the community fundraising portion of that $300,000 match has gone to date.
Commissioner Bertram.
Madam Chair, as I committed to the Park Commission when they recommended unanimous approval for this, and also before the board several times, I said I would personally commit to raising $150,000 from the community, the private sector, to help us match our part of that. And I can tell you that I've secured the $150,000. So I've made good on my word. It's certainly a moving part for a number of different reasons, but the commitments are there. Ben is aware of some of them. I did not identify specifically yet everybody, which I will at the right time, but it's right now we're ahead of ourselves on that. But again, I give you my word that I raised the $150,000 to match half of the county's obligation.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Bertram. Certainly appreciate your and the community's work on that. What are you needing to be able to demonstrate the match for the grant and the timing on the grant, just so we all know?
So Madam Chair, today the resolution is really what the board would be committing to if they decide to pass and move forward with the grant application, would be committing to that $300,000. You know, as you've heard from Commissioner Bertram, he is committed and it has raised the $150,000. So we'd be asking the board to come up with the other $150,000 so we can reach that $300,000. I have had conversations with Mr. Trifles and Mr. Williams in the Budget Committee, and we have identified the county's project fund as a potential funding source in which these funds could be taken from.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I just feel like I should also add the way we would handle the contributions is the contributions would be made to the Paynesville Area Community Foundation, and then a check would be written to Stearns County from the community. So rather than doing onesies and twosies, the entire would be raised and submitted to the foundation and then given to the county in one lump sum.
So I guess the question is that since half of this is going to, I think they ought to be really glad to see that it's going to come from within the community. it would seem like we're still going to need some kind of a letter showing that as part of the grant, as opposed to us saying that we've got other items that we could use, or at least, so will we be able to have that in time?
So, Madam Chair, the way that I would propose it, that if the board is comfortable, that the board commits to the 300,000, and then we, get the 150. Because I don't know that we're going to, and maybe the board's not comfortable with that. That's just my suggestion. I can ask the Community Foundation for that letter. I don't know. I'd have to ask Commissioner Bertram to speak to whether they'd actually have that prior or not. Those funds in the balance.
Commissioner Persky and then Commissioner Bertram.
Couple things. I guess I would be comfortable making a proposal for the commitment up to $100,000 by the county. And then also looking at, if I understand this, that this is going to be perhaps a two-time cycle, that if we don't get it on the first year, we will be able to at least apply for the second time around. And that's agreed with Linda, that she would give us the obligation or the opportunity to be able to try a second year on this?
Right. I mean, she's sitting right behind me, so she can answer, but yes, that is what she told me.
So I guess I would be willing to put the county out for $150,000 into the grant. That would be the maximum. In the past, when we've gone after legacy funds, sometimes we've made no match, but I think we've made matches at 20%. This would be a 25% match, which I think would be within the ballpark of being able to acquire it.
So Commissioner Persky, is your thought then that the application would have $150,000 from the county, and then also note that a similar amount is in the process of, that there are commitments for a similar amount, but, and that the funds are being raised, just so they're seeing that, because I think it's a great thing for them to know that, right? I mean, I think that's a good thing. Is that what your thoughts are?
Would that be in order?
Dr. Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ben, but the requirement for this grant is 50% match. Is that not correct?
Correct, but we can write it in a way as
Yeah, okay.
proposed.
I just
So,
wanted to
yep.
make that clear, that if we only pledge 150,000, we don't even qualify for the grant. So we would need to word it like we're suggesting here, that we have the private sector, which actually should strengthen the application.
Right. No, I think, personally, I think that's important. I haven't gone to look at what they would actually be seeing in that grant application. I think we're all excited about this, and the question isn't in front of us about us providing a $300,000 match. The question in front of us is us providing a 25% match in the community through really great work, providing the other part. But we need to do it, show them in a way that both will show that commitment and not put us on the line if that doesn't come through.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay.
Correct.
All right, Commissioner Bertram.
Madam Chair, two things. One, just for the record, Linda has agreed, and again, once again, has been very cooperative in agreeing to saying that if we don't get the grant, because her timeline is this year, but she did commit to Ben and to me and others that she would wait until next year, if we don't get the grant this year, to do it next year. And all of the contributors that committed to me will also then wait. And that's part of the reason of, what comes first, the chicken or the egg. I've got the commitments, I've got their word, you have my word, we've got the money. But when that happens is a whole different thing. And then let's not forget Linda's $300,000 deduction from the appraised value. So it's $830,000 property. She's agreed right up front to decrease that by $300,000. So now we're down to the $530,000. And then with the grant, and then our 25% and the 25% raised privately, that takes care of it.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Bertram, just to clarify the numbers, so technically the appraisal hasn't been seen by the applicant yet.
I'm sorry.
But yeah, it is about a $300,000 discount, so it is a $600,000 acquisition, not the $530,000. But
I'm
just
sorry,
to
I didn't know when
clarify
that was going to
that's
be
okay.
revealed.
As part of this, if we move forward with the approval of the resolution, at that point is when we would have to release the appraisal to the landowner, because they would have to sign a document through the DNR saying that they would accept less than appraised value.
So I'm looking for a motion to approve the property acquisition for us to
Yeah,
do the
this is your
resolution?
baby.
So moved.
That's why we waited for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't want to do it
I'm waiting for you to
prematurely.
run out of gas. And
All
it's
right,
like,
there's,
I ran out of
Can't
gas.
even get you seated.
I ran out of
until
gas.
you
we'll
get
just
through
get
this.
you to not talk
I'll
and go
second it.
take care of business. Excellent. We've got a motion by Commissioner Bertram and a second by Commissioner Lenzmeyer. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Madam
Yeah,
Chair,
Thank you.
Commissioners, can I just clarify that as part of that motion as well, it's the county is committing to the 150,000 and the
Yes.
other 150 is to come from the community, correct? Correct.
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for sitting so very patiently and for the work that you're doing. It's wonderful.
Thank you. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thanks for all of your support.
All right, Public Works. Ms. Teig.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My first item on the agenda, item K1, is found on packet page 125 of your agendas. I also handed out a bid abstract summary before the board meeting. So I'm asking the board to authorize award of the contract for SAP 073-669-003, and that's the County Road 69 reconstruction from the South County line to Trunk Highway 55 near Georgeville. We did receive 8 bids, and the low bid was Knife River with a bid of $1,485,342.51. That was just over 22% under engineer's estimate. So I'm asking the board to authorize award of that contract.
Move to approve, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner
I'll
Notch.
second that.
Second by Commissioner Persky. Seeing no discussion, all in favor of approving this bid signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, thank you.
Thank you. For my next item, item K2, it starts, there's some background information starting on page 127 of your agenda packets. Today I have with me Sean West. He is the environmental technician for the Highway Department. And you may recall about 3.5 years ago, we talked to you about the Monarch Candidate Conservation Agreement with assurances that we could use for our county highway rights-of-way or any of transportation rights-of-way. So we want to give you an update on that because it does look like the Monarch will be listed later this year. And so we want to revisit this discussion. So I'm going to turn it over to Sean.
Thank you. I'm going to go through a little bit of a review since it's been a long time since I spoke about this to you guys. So the nationwide candidate conservation agreement with assurances for the Monarch butterfly is a unique collaboration between the University of Illinois at Chicago, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and more than 30 other entities from the energy and transportation sectors. Signatories to this agreement receive assurances on enrolled non-federal lands from the service, the Fish and Wildlife Service, that additional conservation measures beyond those in the agreement will not be required for monarch butterfly, and additional restrictions or limitations will not be imposed upon them within the enrolled areas should the species become listed in the future.
Maybe.
There we go. All right. So just a kind of a quick background, the eastern monarch butterfly population has declined by 80% over the past 20 years. There's been a 59% decrease in the population just from 2022 to 2023. The species listing status is currently endangered but precluded, and that is speculated to change this fall, September of 2024. Minnesota is considered summer breeding habitat in the eastern monarch migration, and key threats to habitat loss include land conversion, herbicide use, and mowing. So just to review some definitions before I dig into the agreement. Suitable habitat for monarchs consists of lands that provide milkweed and are suitable for breeding and foraging needs at times of year when the monarchs are present. For central Minnesota, this is roughly from May 15th to September 20th. Enrolled acres are lands that are owned, leased, managed, or permitted within the coverage area and identified by the signed certificate of inclusion of all parties. Eligible lands for enrollment include any non-federal or federal lands within the covered area on which conservation measures or covered activities may occur. Adopted acres are lands within the enrolled lands that are where conservation measures are used to create, enhance, restore, sustain, or maintain habitat that supports monarch butterfly breeding and foraging requirements as documented by effectiveness monitoring. For Stearns County, this would be a 5% of the total enrolled acres, which would be our adoption rate. Assurances on non-federal lands, partners receive assurances from the service that additional conservation measures above and beyond those contained in the agreement will not be required for monarch butterflies, and that additional land, water, or resource use limitations will not be imposed upon them on enrolled lands should the species become listed in the future. Now, what this looks like for Stearns County, we have approximately 970 center line miles of county roads, thank you, paved in gravel, which equates to roughly 7,524 acres of road rights-of-way that would be enrolled into the CCAA. 670 acres of trail right-of-way along the Wobegon, Dairyland, and Beaver Island trails. 80 acres of county-owned facilities that are directly related to transportation. That includes all the highway department facilities and gravel pits. 5% of the total 8,274 acres would be adopted and managed as monarch butterfly habitat, which equals 418 acres, where these conservation measures would be applied to. We intend to adopt 460 acres. The reason for adopting 460 acres, which is 42 acres over the required amount, is to meet a 10% reduction in acreage cost and to provide a buffer in case where we need to remove some acreage from those adopted areas.
If I can just add something in there, we did have a conversation with the Parks Department and realizing they also need to perform certain maintenance activities along their trails. We thought this would be a benefit to them as well to not have to go through that permitting process. And it's also a win for the Highway Department because much of the land adjacent to the trails is already maintained with these type of conservation measures, so it certainly helps us meet that 5% as well.
Next is a map that shows what we're proposing for these roadway corridors to adopt that acreage along. This agreement allows for flexibility in phasing the adopted acreage. This will allow us to train our staff in each district on what roadway corridors conservation measures need to be applied to. And certainly if you want to speak up about.
Yeah, so 4 years ago, when we came to you with this, and I know this is new for Commissioner Bertram as well, but we came to you, we had a proposed map, and we actually did a pretty robust public information campaign to get some public feedback. And based on that feedback, we did modify the roads we're proposing for this agreement. Excuse me. And some of that feedback was that we have farmers haying a significant amount of the rights-of-way along some of those roads. And knowing that that might be an issue for them, we did modify some of that acreage as well. So this map that you see right now is significantly different, I would say, than the map that we had proposed to you guys 4 years ago.
And it doesn't include roadways that were recently reconstructed. Part of those reconstructions include stormwater BMPs that needed to be installed, infiltration basins, where there's restrictions on who can enter and who can mow it, essentially. And so we did want to include those roadways as well because there's already restrictions there. So what these conservation methods look like, for us, a lot of it will be set aside, not mowing it during the active season for the monarchs, which is from May 15th to September 20th. Localized herbicide treatment, so spot spraying versus broadcast spraying in these adopted acreage. Clearing of woody plants and brush to maintain the monarch habitat. And then native planting within the right-of-way where vegetation needs to be reestablished or where habitat needs to be enhanced with flowering nectar plants and milkweed.
And in case you're not covering it later, I'm sorry, but we will continue to be able to do that first pass mowing for safety purposes along all of our roads as part of this.
Part of that adopted acreage is, those calculations did not include that top 8 to 10 feet and then also maintain lawn areas and view sheds for people who are already maintaining their lawns or mowing their lawns. Part of the agreement, there are monitoring provisions.
Sorry.
The partner will be responsible for tracking and reporting compliance with the agreement, so dates and times and locations for implementing conservation measures on the adopted acreage, mapping of planting and prescribed burns and herbicide treatment areas. We are required to do randomized milkweed stem counts on 1,500 square foot plots. And then there is an annual reporting requirement as well.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
Is that mapping that's done, is that, how much human effort does that require versus something else? And if it's on the human side, is that something we can partner with our educational folks on? And our volunteers? I mean, how are you approaching that?
For the monitoring specifically of those specific acres, well, our plan right now was to put it all on Sean, but we can certainly investigate some other options for that.
Just asking.
The actual
It's the kind of
requirements.
thing I could see SCTCC or some of the other environmental program. I mean, there's just some others, unless it's more work, then this could be.
Well, the actual requirements for the monitoring provisions aren't that intensive as far as labor
I
goes.
mean, you're
It's-
not going to have to sit there and go through 800
No, nothing like that. So the actual workload for those requirements isn't that bad.
Right.
So when we're talking about covered activities on enrolled acres, our activities would include our basic maintenance functions like mowing, culvert repairs, and that sort of thing. But it also covers construction associated with maintenance and modernization of existing infrastructure. So any of our construction projects that come up throughout the county. When we're looking at costs, there are application administration fees through University of Illinois, Chicago. And there's cost to project development and implementation time and materials. What we're looking at, there's a base application fee of $3,000, which is a one-time fee. And the base fee is $2,000 a year, plus $4 for each acre that's adopted. With the 10% reduction, if we're meeting that 10% over on the adopted acres, it's roughly $3,283 annually. Without the 10%, it's $3,656. It is $6,656 for that first year, but that includes that application fee.
So, and we're going to get into some of the pros and cons in a little bit here, but one thing I want to point out, so yes, this is an annual cost that we would have to absorb into our budget, but if we compare that to the cost of having to do a monarch habitat study every time we want to do a project, it would also incur delays into delivering some of those projects. And as an example, the Wisconsin DOT, which butterfly was it? It was a different one.
Conner blue butterfly was listed as endangered in 1992. And that essentially shut down any maintenance and construction operations that they had going at the time. They went through the process of developing a habitat conservation plan, an HCP, in 1994 and finalized the plan in 1999. So it took 5 years to develop that plan. And right now, through the Minnesota County Engineers Association, we talked to a representative from Wisconsin DOT, and they said their rough costs are around $18,000 to $20,000 a year administrative. Now that includes public outreach and education, surveying, monitoring, research, and training, with an additional cost of surveys on top of that of $20,000 to $30,000. That's not to say that we would not have to do any surveys for all of our projects, but so we still may end up having to do surveys depending on the project by project basis.
Go ahead. Yep.
Part of this program is it does create a weak federal nexus between us and the Fish and Wildlife Service. We will be required per the agreement to comply with Section 7 or the Endangered Species Act requirements. We are already make efforts to comply with the Endangered Species Act. An example recently is the northern long-eared bat, which was listed a few years ago. And we already are compliant with that because we're removing our trees for our construction projects during the northern long-eared bat inactive time.
And I would point out that when the northern long-eared bat was first listed and the rules, they hadn't quite figured out the rules and the regulations for us yet. You may recall that we had to delay a few of our projects because we could not get the approval to clear trees. And since then, they have now said November 15th to March 31st, you can clear trees because that is an inactive time for them to be nesting. So that's just one example that I want to give you. We would be in that situation, only probably a little bit more costly with the monarch butterfly should we not choose to enroll in this agreement, and it would get listed.
One other species that we have that's on the endangered species list in Stearns County is the rusty patch bumblebee. Again, we're already meeting requirements within high potential zones or HPZ zones that restrict our mowing dates and mowing widths and that sort of thing. One thing with this CCA agreement for the monarch butterfly, University of Illinois Chicago is developing a bumblebee CCA. As most of you know, pollinators in the United States, thank you, are seeing a decline in population all over the world. So really, this monarch CCA, once the bumblebee CCA is developed, will mesh relatively well with this additional sort of agreement once those species are listed as well.
That agreement, if it is implemented for the rusty patch bumblebee or the bumblebee in general, would be an additional fee, but based on the area within the county, we would want to analyze whether or not it would actually be worth it for us to enroll in that program. And as Sean stated, some of our efforts related to the monarch may help increase that population anyway.
So some of the pros and cons for enrollment, continued county maintenance and construction operations sort of as normal. Allows a fast track of permit approvals for standard construction projects. Maintenance and construction and utility activities excluded from further federal permit requirements if the monarch is listed. It would allow to continue cutting and haying enrolled highway rights-of-way on acreage, on enrolled acreage portions, of course not the adopted acreage portions. Cost-effective way to mitigate and avoid current future construction project delays permitting if the monarch is listed. Conservation measures and overlap in habitat with the future bumblebee CCA. And we'd be doing our part to create and enhance critical habitat for a species in need. It'll also allow us to continue issuing our utility and work within rights-of-way permits. So once the monarch is listed, if we're not enrolled in a program, we can no longer permit other entities to go within our right-of-way to do work or disturb habitat. It basically provides us with insurance and reduces our regulatory risk moving forward once the monarch is listed. And some of the cons, there's the CCA fees and costs, upfront time and cost putting together an implementation plan for the CCA, time and materials for implementing conservation methods annually. It would reduce the ability to farm, cut, hay, rights of way along the adopted acre roadways. Cutting would be deferred until after September 20th or before May 15th. General restrictions to public unadopted acres for UTV and ATV use. The agreement does not cover new infrastructure or related activities, newly acquired or previously undeveloped or maintained rights of way. And we need to have the application submitted before the final ruling of the monarch.
Commissioner Notch has a...
Oh, I can wait till the end.
Okay.
Well, I do want to point out one other thing. So although it was listed as a con that we would not be able to allow people to farm or hay our rights of way in the adopted acres, if we would not, if we do enroll, we can continue to allow farmers who hay our rights of way in the non-adopted acres. Whereas not enrolling, we would have to put a stop to any of that activity that takes place in our rights of way. And I'm sure you all know how popular that would be.
So
right. At that point, our right of way.
Modify it or contain it in the 860 acres, but not in the tens of thousands of other acres.
Correct.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
The next slide shows kind of the timeline. The Monarch was listed December 15th, 2020. We're approximately in the middle of this before the September 30th, 2024 deadline, where the Fish and Wildlife Service is required by court to publish a proposed listing. So the idea with this is the UIC, University of Illinois Chicago, does anticipate a rush of applications the closer we get to the anticipated ruling. This could mean delays in approval of application and receiving our certificate of inclusion, which would lead to project and permitting delays as well as pauses in maintenance activities. So as you can imagine, this is a nationwide agreement, so every county or potentially township entity applying all at the end of this time period, there could be significant delays in application approval, which means we're stuck not moving forward if our application is not approved once the butterfly is listed. And just a final slide here, showing the monarch population counts over the past 20 to 30 years. Like I said previously, the eastern monarch population declined by 59%, which is the second lowest count in the last 30 years. So the likely listing of the monarch this fall is probably pretty good.
So in summary, we view, at the Highway Department, we view this Monarch Candidate Conservation Agreement with Assurances, which I'm going to call the CCAA from now on, so I don't have to say that mouthful. We view it as basically an insurance policy for us to be able to, for the most part, do business as usual. We will not be mowing our rights-of-way, edge of right-of-way to edge of right-of-way any longer, but we will be able to continue doing most of our basic maintenance activities. If the Parks Department, based on our initial conversations, wants to join us in this, and it sounds like they do, they would be able to continue their maintenance activities. Our construction projects would not be delayed. So unless the board has, and today, unless the board has any strong opposition to us moving forward with this, we would look into potentially putting a small article in the county newsletter that would come out in April. I know that I need to get that information to administration here within the next day. We would create a web page that had more information on this. It would have the map, it would explain why we are doing this, because I know that was the biggest question we had with the public outreach last time is, why would you propose to spend money to do this on your own rights of way? But we would have that webpage. We would include some information in the county newsletter. I'm going to be on Chasm on April 11th, I believe. I will have to check that date on my calendar. I would talk about it briefly there as well. We can certainly, I know there are some different roads. Again, the roads we've added have those infiltration areas that are not supposed to have any activity on them already anyway. So that's kind of how we've chosen a lot of our roads. We can certainly try to do a little bit more public outreach with this as well. But again, if the board doesn't have any strong opposition today, then we would bring back the final application at the last meeting in April for the board to approve. So, because we're hopeful that we could beat that rush of applications. There are several counties who have enrolled. That's the reason we know trails are now eligible as transportation corridors based on what they've done. And we can get some information from them. Now, the Monarch hasn't been listed, so it's not that they know how much quicker everything goes yet, but they have already enrolled, and we've learned from them on the application process. But I guess if the board has any questions, we can certainly take them.
Commissioner Notch.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Just probably observation. It'd be interesting, in 5 to 10 years, do they do another study to determine if nothing changed, what was benefited, besides it's easy to tap a governmental unit to collect this fee versus telling farmers or landowners up and down that, hey, you need to set aside so many acres to do this. It's always interesting how it's so convenient you can push the governmental entities to create this, but it'd be more interesting if they say we're going to re-study it in 5 or 10 years. You know, maybe it follows the same trend. It might be low now, and all of a sudden it starts picking back up. You know, is it
Good point, Commissioner Lenzmer.
just
So what's the annual cost of doing this? And then is there an additional cost per project or Or, you know, how bad is it we get tied up here?
So our annual cost after the first year, because the first year includes a $3,000 application fee. Our annual cost after that is roughly $3,656 if we don't make that 10% reduction, if we don't adopt above our minimum. What was the other part of the question?
So then the cost to projects would be additional permitting, so additional work upfront on behalf of staff, and then potential delays.
That's if
And
we don't do this.
If we don't do this. And then those permitting costs could, I'm not guaranteeing every single project will, but they could include a monarch habitat study that needs to be done before we can get our federal permits to do our construction projects. And those federal permits don't apply only to federal projects. We have federal permits on any project that we touch a wetland. We have to get a Corps of Engineers permit. And so that basically federalizes those projects. The other thing is, if we say, well, we don't need a federal permit, and not that we would, but if we would say, well, we just have to replace this culvert quick, all it takes is one person driving by, seeing that happen and making a phone call. And then the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service can come out and enforce that. So it's, yes, we are guaranteed costs if we enroll of that let's just say almost $4,000. We're guaranteed that if we enroll in this. If we don't enroll, those costs are still unknown, and I have to believe that there are consultants out there that are studying monarch habitat right now in preparation for the rush of having to do habitat studies on reconstruction projects.
And then the time, right, the time slowing down. I didn't mean to move so quickly from you, Commissioner Notch.
Oh,
You
no,
did
that's
bring up
fine.
a really excellent point. It
That's
is
fine.
a lot easier to come to bodies like ours as opposed to landowners, but that is a little frustrating. I get that it's not as efficient to go the other route, but.
And they do know they have somewhat of a captive audience. Of course, we need to be
Yes,
able to continue
we do.
doing our routine work. Much like a lot of endangered species, I do believe they will continue to monitor the monarch populations. That doesn't mean they're going to delist it at any point. The other option we have, when we enroll in this agreement, it's not a lifetime or nothing option. We can decide if we get into this and we realize that U.S. Fish and Wildlife is not really holding up what they promised here, we can enroll. Yes, it is absolutely, if that's the case, we know that it's been money not necessarily well spent. But right now, we have to take them on their word that there will not be additional requirements for us because we have these adopted acres. So, yes, it is absolutely a bit of a gamble, but we feel like it is an insurance policy.
So what's the process for getting out of
Commissioner
it?
Lenzmeyer.
Sorry,
Good.
I'm getting wound up here. This
Yes,
isn't
but we're
gonna
going
be
to keep
pretty.
moving on because we still have two
We
more
will,
things and our
we just
other
cancel
meeting.
it,
Yeah,
basically.
it's a revocation of our certificate of inclusion.
Yeah.
We notified the administrators that we no longer want to participate in the agreement.
Okay. It's not like the mafia where you're a member for life.
No.
At
least we hope not.
Commissioner Persky or Commissioner Bertram?
Yes.
Just to your point earlier, Commissioner Clark, we may have some groups that want to assist in the program. I don't know if there's 4-H groups, conservation groups that would maybe want to enhance some environment. So there's an opportunity here for them perhaps. So.
Yeah, the environmental students at the colleges too. Commissioner Bertram?
Madam Chair, it kind of is like the mafia, half of it. This really is unfortunate. Gets back to my point of we're being held, hostage by doing this because you have to do it. I mean, is the mosquito next? Are they going to do that? It goes, and then as I said with soil and water, they keep, the federal, state keep adding regulations, cost more money, highway projects. The biggest thing that we were, as chair of the Highway 23 Coalition, I've been asked by numerous legislators, let's identify all the things that highway construction is forced to do, which increases the project so high that they can build less roads. And Jody knows, you guys know that firsthand, and state roads. And it just goes, and then we keep having to do it. I feel sorry for you. But when Commissioner Lenzmeyer says how to stop it, I mean, and a lot of this stuff is done by rulemaking and, all that stuff from different levels. It really is unfortunate, and I'm inclined to vote no, not because I don't believe you, but somewhere and somehow we have to start sending signals that enough. I mean, we've reached this, and there is going to be pushback to this. I mean, people don't understand it, and then what happens is they blame us, and we're being held, and you, and they're being held victim by that. I was told by somebody a lot smarter than me that the monarch feeds off of thistle seed, and yet we spray for thistles, and we require CRP acreages to cut thistles. So again, where does it stop and where does it start? Yeah, where does it start and stop? Right. Is CRP land taken into consideration of what that habitat does without having to include the road projects, or doesn't it?
In order for it to be considered with this program, it has to be specifically related to transportation and energy.
Right.
So that's why we can't enroll parks, and that's why we can't enroll minor trails within the parks or stuff like that. CRP land may be considered monarch habitat if it contains milkweed and a flowering nectar plant for which the butterfly can feed off of. That's why they're feeding on the thistles, because they have a flowering nectar bud.
And yet, Madam Chair, we require thistles to be cut.
A good thing is they do go to a number of other things that aren't banned. Your point is incredibly well taken. We're not taking any votes today. You are hopefully hearing some frustration about what others might be forcing. And I will say, when it comes to just the process, the business of doing our roads, I do think we're going to this is something we're probably going to have to move forward. I know my family is trying as hard as we can to have as many plants that might be helpful, but we don't own enough land to make a difference. It is a crazy thing. It's a real challenge. Yeah.
Well, just one last point.
Yep.
If you could put like a 2-page talking points as people raise questions, as Jody talks about this and others, and as it starts becoming reality. And 2, could you identify who we could communicate with, either individually or as a board, to just say, really? I mean, and if the board wants to do it together, we can. If they don't, we can do it individually. But who's the rule-making authority? Who's the person that we could communicate that with? And if you could assist in drafting something that sounds intelligent, which is beyond me.
Well, I think us getting information is always good, and it sounds like a link to the website and whatever the social media that will be done around this will be useful.
Jeff, do you need a term for this?
Can you say it publicly, or do you want to just whisper to my
Be
ear?
careful. Be careful.
Or write it down?
Environmental extortion.
If I could just follow
Ms.
up on a couple of things. So the last time we did a significant amount of public outreach on this in late 2020, and we actually did get some very positive feedback, like,
I'm
we're
not
so glad you're doing this. This is wonderful. And we've got some feedback similar to what you would expect. Most often, once I explained the benefits of the county, somebody legitimately asked me if I lost my mind. Once I explained the benefits of the county and why we were doing this and how our hands were a little bit tied, most of those people were understanding, and they accepted the reason that we needed to do this. I will say, Sean and I have had discussions, and if the monarch population keeps declining and they declare it endangered, I don't know that there's anything that can be done aside from us having to do everything in our power to protect it as part of the permitting process. And to prove that we don't need to do anything above and beyond, we would have to do that habitat study, much like many other species of things that we have to watch out for on our projects. And I don't think, unfortunately, it would be as simple as, well, we have to cut the trees now between November 15th and March 31st. That's actually relatively simple, but we can't move dirt between November 15th and March 31st, or September, the dates you gave from September to March. And so we have to move the dirt in those prime summer months, which are also the prime monarch months. So I don't know that as part of rulemaking, this is going to change. Now, what I'm hoping is that the monarch population will grow as more and more people across the country take some of these measures, and then perhaps they will reconsider its listing. I know that that's not generally very common for them to go in the other direction, but it can happen.
Well, thank you. Hopefully you're hearing both the frustration.
Yeah, maybe next time
and-
you can bring good news.
And that it's good that you figured out a way to mitigate some of the real challenges that there could be. So thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and move to our next item now because we are at when we're supposed to be done and we have another meeting after this, but we have two more important presentations. So hopefully we're all able to stay focused and not get.
I'll be ready for that, Pitney.
Yeah, there you go.
Just a side note,
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Knott.
it's interesting. I have about a 1 1/4 acre pollinator plot, and I did notice from last year to the year before, so 2022, the monarchs in there, you couldn't walk, and they were buzzing out last year, maybe a handful, and I don't know if it's just, we had a dry weather pattern last year, does that affect it, is it just the vine?
Right. Well, we could have that same kind of issue this year, given how dry it's been. That's kind of scary. Well, welcome. Thank you for waiting for us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's always
now
interesting.
you don't have to do penance next time you go to
Well,
confession.
you know, it
There
is
you
Lent,
go.
so.
That's true. Good point. And if you both don't mind just introducing yourselves for the record.
Sure. Good morning. I'm Karen Punsack. I'm Executive Director for Great River Regional Library.
I'm Amanda Jones. I am the Library Services Coordinator for the Waite Park Public Library.
So thanks for your time this morning. I know.
Thanks for your time.
Well, yeah, we always learn things when we come here. We always do. So Great River, as you know, is a 6-county partnership between Stearns and the other counties on the slide you see here. We have 32 locations that actually have full-service libraries, and then the locker out in Sartell, GRL to go. I don't remember, can we do this? Oh yeah, we can, look at that. So this is our annual report, just an overview of activities from last year. In the 10 libraries that you see here, they're spread throughout the county. The large majority of them are actually in western Stearns County. And the numbers you see on this slide are actually the regional numbers. So we had 95,000 card holders for the entire region last year. And of those, 19,000 were brand new cards last year. Based on previous presentations here, I did bring a breakout of each library within Stearns County's usage. And I think what we're seeing as a trend is we're rebounding from COVID, and I'll say COVID, even though it isn't as much of an impact as it used to be. Our circulation is about 2.5 million for the entire region. That doesn't include our digital location. And what has changed, though, is we have more circulation at the digital library than we ever had before. We had 380,000 items check out in ebook and e-audiobook format. And of those, 23,696 total borrowers. And in contrast, the St. Cloud Public Library had 22,754 borrowers. So we actually have more people using the digital library now than we do using the St. Cloud Public Library. That's the first time that's happened before. However, there were 497,000 items borrowed at the St. Cloud location. So still more books, physical books going out the door than we are seeing in the digital library. But what has shifted from physical circulation is about 1/3 of our circulation used to be CDs and video. Pre-COVID, that was true. Post-COVID, a lot of that material is no longer available in a format that people can borrow. It's locked down in streaming platforms like Netflix or Disney Plus, and you may or may not be able to purchase and lend content. So that's one of the challenges we're now facing across the region. That being said, children's books, I'm happy to report, are being borrowed at a level never seen before. So lots of shifts happening across the region. Some of the highlights last year, we had a record number of kids sign up for a summer reading program. And, our winter reading program was also very strong. We saw a lot of usage on our new digital platform for that program as well. It's called Beanstack. If you're interested, we'll be launching that again for summer for kids. And then we have been really leaning into partnerships and DEI work as a region. So one of the big partnerships last year was a Testify exhibit that we worked with the Alan Page Foundation to create. There was a physical exhibit down at the Minneapolis Public Library, and we worked with Georgie Page from the foundation to create banners of high-resolution images of that exhibit. So it was available not only at the St. Cloud Public Library, but a large number of the regions across the state were able to recreate that exhibit after we built it. And now on April 30th, there will be a virtual statewide presentation between George and Alan Page about that Testify exhibit, and that will be at 7 p.m. So one of those projects that really had a lot of expansion. And I think we've talked in the past about EPIC here. We worked with the EPIC Foundation through our ARPA dollars to actually create kits that people can check out. So if you have a student who's interested in learning about a career path, each of the career clusters have leaders who have helped create the content in those kits, and they're available for lending. And Amanda can tell you a little bit about what happened in Way Park.
Well, Karen asked me to speak, and I said, why not? So we have been updating our space to make it more cozy and inviting for all age groups. And so something that we did was we saw as staff that the older elementary kids were kind of standing around. There wasn't really a space for them, like a reading space or a comfy space for them to just enjoy picking up a book and reading or exploring. And so we updated the one on the bottom left. We updated that space with a nice comfy rug and some chairs. And that has actually made a difference with kids coming in, either homeschool kids or different ages with their family, or just with their friends coming in and having a space instead of just the littles sitting around in their little table and doing their coloring and exploring of the books. There's a space for the older kids, and that has definitely made them more comfortable. They stay longer. They enjoy just being there more. And then the bottom right picture is our teen area. We had shifted around our lower level and made this corner again a teen, young adult area. And we've actually seen a regular group of teens come in and use it, about 5 to 6, that will come in and sit in the beanbag chairs, enjoy listening to music or reading or doing homework. So it has definitely made an impact there too. With teens, it's hard to get them to really see the library as a cool place. So it's kind of nice that they've been coming more regularly and enjoying that space. And then as Karen talked about partnerships, we've been working, and this was a project that one of our former library assistants had been working with the school systems in Way Park, St. Cloud. But we are exhibiting or displaying artwork from Westwood Elementary. This is Apollo Art Club. It's the high school. So they usually go to St. Cloud State to display their art, and they are renovating that area, I believe, at SESU. So they decided to come and do their art club display with us, which was really great. And then right now we have Discovery Public School doing displaying their children's art and then their students' art. And then next month we're going to have McKinley. So it's been just great having different families, diverse families coming in, seeing their kids, their art, different students coming in and seeing their friends' art, students just in general being able to see their own art be there displayed. And I think it's just been a more colorful, enjoyable atmosphere for all of them. And so that's been exciting for us just to see that difference in our little branch. So.
And Amanda's in her first year at Great River, so you can see she's really jumped in, all in, and done a great job of listening to our youth. We started a youth advisory council this year, and one of the observations from the youth who represent libraries all over the region is there just isn't a comfortable place to sit when you come into the library. So for her to acknowledge that right away in the first year and find a way to make that happen was pretty amazing.
Especially in limited space.
Yes,
You gotta be
White
pretty
Park is
creative.
tiny, so to make that feel comfortable is no small feat. So we want to thank Stearns County as one of our largest supporters in the budget for Great River, and also for providing great representation on our Great River Board. Commissioner Lensmeyer has been on for about 6 years now. We have Lynn Gruing, Zuria Anjem, and Lee Lensmeyer, Al Amdahl, who are also on the board this year, and we just really appreciate the investment we have from our board members in representing our communities and making sure our services are what our communities are looking for.
So a question I have is, how close do we get to being able to have 4 members again, or what do we need to do? Because I'm not sure I've taken out enough children's books with our grandkids, but I've been working on that and telling everybody I know, yeah, there is a stack because they were here this weekend. What else we need to do? Because, we like that. And obviously.
That's a good question. So the Joint Powers Agreement says the board seats are distributed by budget share, and the budget's determined on a 3-part formula. One is borrower numbers, so getting more cards is definitely key. One is population, and one is net tax capacity. And it looks like for 2025's budget, which we just ran numbers on, it's continuing to grow in Wright County's direction in all 3 formula factors right now.
Given where their population
St. Michael has now risen to, if you count the digital library, the 3rd largest circulating location, and I don't know when they're going to stop. It's kind of phenomenal what's happening in the southern part of Wright County.
Well, it's good to hear that so many people are interested in reading and listening and watching and hanging out. All of that's really important. Lee, thank you for your ongoing service, and we certainly appreciate our others on there. And with that, I think we all know how to find you.
Yeah.
Nope. Lee, you got one more
and
thing?
Lee will be in the building later. We have a meeting tonight.
Yeah, you've got a meeting tonight, right?
Yep.
Which what one would normally think would be the library board and the library staff's challenging moment. I don't know if it's the most challenging moment, but we did have a group that wanted to get way more involved in censorship. And it really takes a lot of heat to understaff to take a stand, but the library staff did a terrific job of justifying the rights or the idea of folks they wouldn't ordinarily associate with or endorse, and that was a good job. You done good.
Thank you. No, it's been a stressful time at putting in that due diligence and
We're
figuring it
fortunate
out.
to have a committed staff and a committed board. And, the library is all about First Amendment. And if you know the First Amendment, it's got freedom of assembly and free speech and freedom of religion all kind of mixed together. And we're living it out.
A lot of heat to
Lot.
get those things
That's
going.
true. That's true. Well, please thank staff as well as the rest of the board,
Yeah.
because we know how challenging that's been, and hopefully morale is starting to improve a little.
Yeah, thank you.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll let you get back to your busy day. Thanks again for waiting for us.
You learned a lot.
Yes, you can. You're always welcome. Although you could certainly watch from there too.
Let us know if you see any northern long-eared bats.
So our last item is also a pretty exciting one. We've got our broadband update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try to be quick.
You're fine.
2 weeks ago, today, it was announced that we were successful with our, can you see my pointer up there? The lights. But anyway, for this whole area here, in our border-to-border application, and then a small handful of parcels up here in Ashley and Sauk Center Township, and then a fill-in here in Zion Township. Now, that was, most of the dollars there are going, of course, to the mini premises up in that northeast area, because there's like almost 1,500 premises there, and in the other two, there's only 55. But so we accessed just over $8 million. We have about $2.6 million in it, and then townships have a little over $400,000 in that recent successful application. And almost immediately, the deed announced the next round, which I think was a little unexpected. At least it was unexpected to me. And so we're up against a little bit of a deadline here for our next what we think will be applications. So the deadline approaching here is just March 29, and then they highlight it again down here. So March 29 would be the date that a provider that is going to apply for a grant needs to notify other providers that they're going to do that. So it kicks off what they call a challenge process. And so we're up against that deadline. So what I did was, and I know the board action here says to authorize the county administrator to issue an RFP for the Paynesville area, which frankly I've already done because we were up against this deadline. Let's see, I'm looking for this. Well, I'll go back here. So the two areas that we have remaining are this area here in the eastern portion of Wakefield and the northeast portion of Luxembourg Township, and then our latecomer to the program, Paynesville Township. We have dollars available. So to date, you can see here that we've accessed $18.5 million in border-to-border grant funding, and we've spent of our own dollars about 14.7. We already had a proposal we had several proposals for the Wakefield-Luxembourg area. Arvig was the most cost-effective for us. The board saw those last fall, and at that time the board said, let's not apply for that now. Let's wait until the next round, because we had these other applications that were larger, and we didn't want to, put ourselves in competition with ourselves. So Arvig is taking another look at those numbers. I hope that they're going to come in about what they were last fall. Hopefully they're actually exactly. And so if they were, we would be into that for somewhere in the area of $895,000. A little bit in flux, because perhaps we could maybe move that over and do it in the low density grant program, which maybe would not need so much funding from the county. And then we have Paynesville, and all I have there is what they've committed is $35,000. But you can see the remaining there in the end would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $335,000. So we do have some money to work with Paynesville. We also will have some money coming back into the program, a little, that we could also use for this. So the action that's requested is that I had in the package. I'm sorry, that I had in the package was to authorize me to issue the RFP, which you should still do, and then negotiate with Arvig, which I will do. The action that I don't really need is as much authority as I thought to move ahead, because what we worked out here is anybody that's interested, we'll just require them to give notice to hit that March 29 deadline, and then I'll have time to bring this back to the board before the grant applications are actually due. So we're not quite as rushed as I felt like we would be last week.
So to just confirm, the motion would be to, it's not giving you approval to issue the RFP, such as we're confirming the issuance, right? And then approval to enter into negotiations with Arvig. Does that capture
it? Does. It does.
And then members, just so you know, you might have looked closely at it. We actually gotten in the last round some of the most resources, if not the most resources in the state. And the state is showcasing Stearns for, even if it's the clobbling together approach, really showing it. And at last week's state meeting on broadband, both Runestone and Arvig came up thanking us, so I wanted to pass that on just for the work that's been being done. So it's absolutely shorter than we thought time frame, but it's good in part because both of those companies talked about, you know, what amount of time it's going to take to get moving, and we want to get these funds encumbered. So is there, I know there'll be questions,
Sure.
is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll make the motion.
Excellent, I was hoping you would. Wonderful motion, can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Great, so we have a
And we
motion.
don't want the monarchs to disrupt these people getting in our
They're
right
not
of way.
Just when we got them settled down, I got one.
I'm sure there'll be pollinators around there, so we have a motion, a second, any comments or
Just,
questions?
Madam Chair, I just
Yeah.
want to commend Mike. Obviously, I've learned a lot in the last year about this, and I was somewhat aware of it prior to that, but Mike's done a great job of leading this and orchestrating this, and to have a county as big as Stearns County cover it the way we do certainly is remarkable. So thank you for everything you've done, Mike.
And for the public who might not be aware, we continue as part of that work with all of the providers is making sure there is an affordable high-speed package as part of it, because we have listened and learned from people who are just feeling priced out. So appreciate that the ISPs are working with on this too.
They all are, yeah.
Just a comment,
Yeah,
Madam Chair.
absolutely.
I also, Mike, I want to compliment you on the efforts on this. It's fantastic to see the way it's actually evolving. Yesterday, I found out a friend of mine, a half mile off the Pope County line, is going to be meeting within the next week or so with the Runestone people about getting his service. So it's happening, yeah.
It's exciting. It's really exciting. Well, we have a motion and a second. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, it's approved. Thank you. Yeah, it's very exciting. Can't wait there's not really ribbon cuttings with these, but there ought to be celebrations for the amount of effort. So
We could do a cable cutting.
No, I don't think that's good.
Ooh, we better
No,
not
not
do
one
that.
that's not in private.
Yeah, I will say I went through all of the things in my head I could come up with, and none of them seemed like they would work very well. But I'm glad to see we were on a similar mindset.
Let's do that.
Commissioner Bertram.
Cable cutting.
Cable, there you go.
So we're going to quickly go through issues by commissioner because we're not horribly off, but we are off in the amount of time we're going to have after we adjourn to go to our work session on the Jail Justice Center and be meeting with the architects. Commissioner Notch, do you have anything?
I have nothing.
Okay, Commissioner Persky?
I was just concerned, Mike, we were talking about human services, maybe getting somebody here in this building that we'd have contacts for, reach out for those, and maybe somebody at the information desk. I know that some people are often coming through our door not knowing where to get information, the right thing. I just was wondering if we have.
We've been considering that and seeing what we need to do as far as just work, walls or whatever kind of construction we need to do. But they're fully open at the service center. So, I mean, it's not any different than some of our land services. Their people are there, they can walk in, they can call. And you all heard the report about, the unwinding that we're getting hundreds and hundreds of calls. But we are open at the service center, so I want to make that perfectly clear. There are people there, it is open, and people can walk in. But yes, we are moving towards opening something here as well.
And in case you hadn't heard it, something to consider, apparently Sherburne uses RSVP volunteers in 4-hour block rotations, and that actually works pretty well for them. Commissioner Bertram.
Madam Chair, to build on that, the front desk people, I'm not sure if that's who you're talking about specifically or generally, but if we could get a resource person at the front desk at the West Service Center, because I do hear a lot where people come and they don't know where to go, whatever. And I know we've always had someone that was doing work there, and then they could tell people what to do, because the deputy really isn't the person to be telling people where to go. But just a thought on that. But the most important thing is today's ice cream cone day at Dairy Queen.
Yes, it is.
And if we do this right, I can stop in St. Cloud, Cold Spring, and Paynesville.
Holy shit.
So I'm not sure when we're going to get
almost a home run.
out. It is. I got three for, yep.
Gotta find one more location.
I'd love to get an update on the survey, the county survey that we did. I assume that's coming up.
Yes.
I did share with Mike, and I think the other board members would too. I think the sooner we see the HRA board applications would be good, because I heard there's a lot of them. So if we can get them, at least start reviewing them, you might have a report on that.
Yeah.
And then the Stearns County Fair, you've started a good dialogue on that, and maybe we should finish that at some point. Other than that, that's it.
Lee?
The, earlier, Steve, you talked about the Emergency Services Board. They've got a meeting. Well, let's clarify. Jeff, you're the designated person now for that.
I am, and I won't be there next week because I'm going to be in Nisswa. So
All right.
you're going to need to go.
Okay, and Steve and I were clarifying that. Okay, I'll write it down, and I'll do that. They normally serve big roles.
Anything else, Commissioner Lenzmeyer?
That's it.
Okay. Let's see.
God, this
Couple
turned
quick
into a-
things. The legislature is hitting all their deadlines, so they're trying to do all of the bills at one fell swoop, which is both maybe a little scary and maybe good. But we will be seeing, there are a number of things we care about that they're at least, I'm not even sure I can say that they're going to make great decisions yet, but we're just going to keep working on those. And tonight happens to be St. Cloud area evening at the Capitol. So if anybody's listening to this and they're wanting to go, it's at the former Kelly from like 5 to 7. A good opportunity to talk about our issues with legislators. And Dr. Williams, did you have anything else? I know you're going to end up sending us an update about some of that, but if you could update us quickly.
Yeah, just on I was going to bring up the Housing Trust Fund appointments. Currently, we have 8 applicants for 3 positions. So it won't be near as unwieldy as it was when we had 25 or some for the airport, if you remember. Well, Commissioner Bertram wasn't on the board then, but I thought we would do a similar process there, is that we'll send you the applications and have you rank them and then get them back, and then we can supply that back to you before the board meeting. And then your conversation at the board meeting can identify those applicants by number rather than by name, because they're not finalists. If the board thinks that's an acceptable way to proceed, then
And if we
we'll do
would
that.
determine that we want
I
a
think it works.
subcommittee to do interviews.
Yeah, if you want to do some interviews at
But it's
that
hard to know
point.
that without seeing it. And
Yeah.
I actually got 2 texts this morning asking if there was still an opportunity to apply, and basically said it hadn't been appointed yet, but you better get applications in
Yep.
quickly.
But if the board's
I think
okay with
sounds
that,
good. Is the board
that's how
okay
we'll
with
do it.
that?
Yeah.
We can hype out over
Okay.
the airport board. It doesn't hurt if we wait, because the market conditions in the air industry are continuing to evolve. So I'm of the opinion that conceivably the issues faced by that group are going to change over time. So I don't think this is a drop dead urgent matter for now.
All right, well, thank you. So seeing nothing else, unless, Randy, you've got something, okay, we're going to call this meeting, we're adjourning, and we will be reconvening as our work group on the Jail Justice Center. Thank you.
This is like